Chapter 2100. In front of the dilapidated gate, the atmosphere was dead silent. As Mi Wuya moved out of the way, this battle that could be said to be unprecedented and unparalleled had come to an end just like that. The hearts of the crowd were in turmoil. Mi Wuya's sudden decision caught them by surprise, astonishment and confusion. But no matter what, Mi Wuya's action was equivalent to admitting that even if he fought desperately, he could not stop Lin Sun from entering the dilapidated gate. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. In front of the dilapidated gate, Lin Sun stood with his back to the crowd. Behind him, there was a road paved with blood and corpses. On this path, he had killed one peerless expert after another, and he had also witnessed experts being defeated one after another. The world was silent, and everything was silent. Lin Sun's body was covered with shocking wounds, and blood was still flowing. His hair was disheveled, and his figure was tall and straight. Standing alone in front of the dilapidated gate that was thousands of meters high, he had a kind of power that deterred the world and looked down on the 9 heavens. All the gazes in the surroundings converged onto him, and their faces were filled with shock. It was this man who, in less than 30 minutes, bathed in blood, killed 24 people and seriously injured 13. He was like the dominator of war, unstoppable and unparalleled. Jing Tianan, Ling Hongzhuang and other peerless figures were all defeated by him. Even someone as powerful as Mi Wuya took the initiative to make way for him at the last moment. Who would have thought of this before? Who could have predicted that this battle for the platform would end with Lin Sun's victory? No. Everyone was shocked like never before. After a while, Lin Sun seemed to have returned to his senses. He coughed deeply, and blood gurgled from the corner of his mouth. "Brother Mi, do you admit defeat?" His voice was hoarse, and his face was pale and transparent. His blood-stained body showed signs of weakness and dilapidation. At this point, the battle had been going on for around the time for an incense stick to burn. He'd unleashed his full strength and slaughtered with all his might. Even though he'd annihilated numerous great enemies and scared off all the other experts, only he himself was clearly aware of the severity of the situation he was in. But even so, there was still disdain in his eyes, and his demeanor was as elegant as before. "Brother Mi, are you convinced?" 5 words broke the depressing atmosphere in the field, and made everyone's heart tremble. What did Lin Sun mean by this? Was he unwilling to let Mi Wuya back down just like that? Mi Wuya sighed and said, "Even if I don't want to, I can't." This battle was unfair to Lin Sun, but under such circumstances, he still failed to defeat Lin Sun, who had already been injured. This made Mi Wuya realize that even he would not be Lin Sun's match in a fair battle. Therefore, he had to admit defeat. At this point, everyone was shocked speechless. Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Innerheart, had slaughtered his way through the dilapidated gate, stepping over pools of blood and corpses, and finally arriving at the dilapidated gate. Even someone as powerful as Mi Wuya could not help but sigh in admiration and make way for him. This was the true invincibility of this realm. He used blood and slaughter to forge a path of invincibility. There was nothing fake about it. Throughout history, there had never been anyone who could create such an invincible battle record. Even Xian Kong didn't have such accomplishments all those years ago. Xian Jiuyin sighed with emotion in his heart. Amongst the people present, only he knew Xian Kong's ability the best, and only he understood how extraordinary Xian Kong's title of invincible in the Saint Realm was. But after witnessing Lin Sun's battle, Xian Jiuyin knew that on the path of invincibility in the Saint Realm, Lin Sun surpassed his senior brother Xian Kong. "Little monk, what's wrong?" Suddenly, Xian Jiuyin noticed a trace of blood seeping out from the corner of Ling Kezi's mouth, and his face had turned pale. Ling Kezi seemed to have suddenly sobered up, and he suddenly let out a long breath of foul air and said with a lingering fear, "I'm fine." In fact, his heart was still surging, and he was on the verge of losing control of his mind. The reason was that he'd once paid attention to Lin Sun with the Immaculate Buddha heart, and he'd seen some unbelievable and terrifying scenes. Those scenes seemed to be a river of time that ran through the past, present, and future, and Lin Sun's figure was like a great sun that illuminated the river of time alone. Numerous mighty figures with terrifying auras and invincible auras charged out from the endless river of time in an attempt to replace Lin Sun. But without exception, all of them returned in failure. Lin Sun's figure was like a natural chasm that spanned the past, present, and future, and no one could surmount it or shake it. This is invincible in this realm since ancient times and the future. After a long time, Ling Kezi let out a dreamy sigh in his heart. It was because he'd peeped at those terrifying scenes with the Immaculate Buddha heart that Ling Kezi suffered a backlash and almost collapsed his state of mind. But it was also because of this that he completely concluded that no one in the same realm in all heavens could surpass Lin Sun in the past. In the future, no one would break the legend of Lin Sun's invincibility in this realm. "You didn't see anything, did you?" Xian Jiuyin was suspicious. Ling Kezi shook his head. This secret was too shocking. If it was spread out, it would inevitably cause unpredictable disturbances. After all, it was already an extremely great feat to be said to be invincible in this realm in all heavens. Like Xian Kong. But Xian Kong also died in this realm. If people knew that Lin Sun, Xian Kong's junior brother, had set foot on the realm that could be said to be invincible in this realm since ancient times and the future, what kind of disturbances would it cause? In front of the dilapidated gate, the breath of destruction pervaded. Lin Sun didn't look back. With his back to the crowd, he coughed violently again and said, "Whether you admit it or not, I didn't have to fight in this battle." As he spoke, he took a step forward with difficulty. The platform under his feet followed him and walked into the dilapidated gate covered by the breath of destruction. No one knew that he had the supernatural power of forbidding time, which could freeze time for a moment. Although it was only a moment, it was more than enough for him to take the platform into the dilapidated gate. So how could those people present stop him? They might not even have time to react. No one knew that when he fought to the point he was covered in injuries and exhausted his physical strength, the sword spirit, Yi, who'd transformed into a flying sword that was silent within his hair, and the lightning emperor of Nirvana, Ji Xian, who was concealed within the heaven concealment talisman, had sent voice transmissions with the intention of helping him annihilate the enemies present here. But they were refused by Lin Sun without hesitation. He only wanted to fight this battle by himself. As it turned out, even someone as powerful as Mi Wuya was no match for him at the same cultivation level as he was. Soon, Lin Sun's wounded and blood-stained figure disappeared along with the platform. As they watched him leave, the crowd's hearts were boiling, but they were also filled with doubt. What did Lin Sun mean by that? They couldn't figure it out, and they didn't understand that Lin Sun had a chance to directly enter the dilapidated gate. So many treasures. Someone suddenly said. Almost all the treasures carried by the experts killed by Lin Sun in the previous bloody battle were left in the field. Although they were stained with blood, they still exuded a tempting luster. His words caused the expressions of the crowd to change subtly. Among those treasures, there was no lack of mysterious and unfathomable emperor weapons. You only have eyes for external objects. When will you have your own Tao? Mi Wuya showed a trace of disdain and turned to leave. Among those in the same realm, only Lin Sun could make him look at him differently and respect him. He didn't take anyone else seriously. Although the battle for the Chaos Treasure failed, Mi Wuya didn't have many regrets. On the contrary, the battle with Lin Sun made him completely aware of some of the flaws in his path of Tao. It could be called a great gain. He had decided to make a breakthrough in the ancient immortal forbidden zone. Although these treasures are tempting, don't forget that there are still a group of martial emperors outside. Can you guarantee that you can leave with these spoils of war alive? Ling Hongzhuang's clear eyes swept across the crowd, and after saying this, she also floated away. Like Mi Wuya, she had also decided to find a treasure land and make a breakthrough. In fact, someone like her had long possessed the foundation and confidence to become a quasi-emperor. The reason why she had suppressed her cultivation was to enter the ancient immortal forbidden zone. Now that the opportunity to fight for the chaos treasure had passed, Ling Hongzhuang's breakthrough had become the most critical issue. It's not just these treasures. I'm afraid that even if Lin Sun obtains that chaos treasure, he will still encounter great danger when he wants to leave. Jing Tiannan's expression flickered. He glanced at the treasures in the field and finally left as well. In the following time, experts chose to leave one after another. Some stayed behind, their eyes flashing. A moment later, there were only a dozen people left in front of the dilapidated gate. Xian Juyin seemed to have seen through the minds of the remaining experts. He sneered. "Everyone, you've been killed and you're still thinking about these treasures? Aren't you afraid of losing your life here?" "What do you mean?" Someone snorted. Xian Juin's smile faded and his eyes flashed with deep disdain. "What do I mean? It's very simple. These treasures are Lin Sun's spoils of war. I'll take care of them for the time being. If you don't want to die, hurry up and leave with me." The expressions of the crowd changed as they glared at Xian Juin. Xian Juin could not be bothered with them. He patted Ling Kezi on the shoulder and said, "Go, help Lin Sun collect the spoils of war. Leave these guys to me." Ling Kezi exclaimed and said awkwardly, "Monks don't touch blood. What's more, those people are all dead. If those martial emperors find out that I'm snatching their relics, how can I still be alive? Are you going or not?" Xian Juin glared at Ling Kezi and he immediately cowered. He stepped forward weakly and came to the bloody path created by Lin Sun and began to collect the spoils of war. Someone immediately became anxious and shouted, "Monk, leave the treasures behind if you don't want to die." This person was Ho Jing. Chapter 2101. Ho Jing threatened Ling Kezi in an impolite manner. This is called courting death. Xian Juin couldn't help laughing, and he suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, he appeared in front of Ho Jing, and his palm slashed down like a knife. Swish! The void was easily cut open like a piece of paper, and the peerlessly fierce palm was suffused with a mysterious aura of the Great Way. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Ho Jing shouted and fought it head-on. Both of them fought fiercely, but the outcome was decided in just a moment. Puff! Xian Juin slashed furiously with a silver Taoist sword, easily smashing Ho Jing's sovereign weapon and chopping off his head. As blood sprayed, Xian Juin sheathed his sword and said lazily, "Does anyone else want to try courting death?" He hadn't made a move before, so both his physical strength and state were at their peak. So it was naturally easy for him to kill a powerhouse like Ho Jing who had been injured for a long time. In fact, besides him and Ling Kezi, almost all the others in front of the dilapidated gate were injured. Ho Jing's death horrified the other powerhouses, and they didn't dare to stay any longer and scattered like birds and beasts. Xian Juin revealed a resentful expression, and he combed his hair with his hand as he muttered, "Why do I feel that there's actually no one amongst them that can go against me? Am I too strong or are they too weak?" Ling Kezi, who was collecting the spoils of war, spat. Xian Juin's hand that combed his hair froze, and he said, "What do you mean?" Ling Kezi shrank his head and pointed at the blood on the ground, and he said, "I feel disgusted at the sight of blood, and I want to vomit." Xian Juin was furious. This monk was obviously making insinuations. But before he could speak, Ling Kezi said, "Are you going to stay here and wait for Lin Sun?" Xian Juin said, "The ancient immortal forbidden area is a place of great danger, but it also contains many great opportunities. Besides the chaos treasure, there are many good things in other places. For example, the small tree that is rooted under the inverted volcano has 3 fruits like babies and can meditate. It's extraordinary. I intend to have a look." Do you want to go with me? Ling Kezi shook his head quickly. That small tree is strange and terrifying. In the past, it has killed countless emperors. This opportunity is too great, and I don't have the life to take it. Xian Juyin pursed his lips. Coward! Ling Kezi packed up his spoils and walked over, and then he said, I'm not a coward. I just want to enter into closed-door cultivation. After a discussion, they decided to let Ling Kezi take care of the spoils and return them to Lin Sun when there was a chance in the future, while Xian Juyin set off alone. According to him, if he didn't see that strange little tree and have a taste of its fruit, he wouldn't be satisfied. Ling Ke's advice was ineffective, so he could only remind him to be more careful. Not long after, the two of them left the dilapidated door. At the same time, the area outside the ancient celestial forbidden zone was no longer peaceful. Although it was impossible to see what was happening in front of Mount Buzhou's ruined gate, but after the bloody battle, the great emperors were able to deduce some of the truth. When the battle in front of the ruined gate erupted, next to Cloudy Mountain, the life lamps of the great emperors began to extinguish one after another. They were all the strong men killed by Lin Sun in the battle. Unfortunately, Taishu Hong and the Fire Spirit Empress didn't know, and they couldn't guess. The only thing they were able to guess was that it was very likely that the chaotic battle for that chaotic treasure and fortuitous encounter had completely erupted. At this moment, the great emperors began to analyze and deduce, nervously paying attention to the life lamps in front of everyone. Impossible! How could Feng Biling of my clan die so quickly? He has the lost soul horsetail whisk. Not long after, a great emperor of the Feng clan of the far ancient imperial clan shouted angrily, attracting many people's attention. Feng Biling! This young man's combat strength was extremely strong, and it was indeed surprising that he died so quickly. And in the following time, the great emperor's expressions changed one after another. Some shouted angrily, some had an ugly expression, and none of them said a word. The reason was that the life lamps in front of them had been extinguished. This also meant that the descendants of their respective clans had completely died in the chaotic battle for the Chaos Treasure. In the chaotic battle for the Chaos Treasure, he had completely perished. Taishu Hong and the other great emperors were all nervous. The life lamps swayed, causing their minds to fluctuate. The lights flickered, causing their minds to fluctuate along with them. My sex Shang Xian controls the lawless saber. Why is his light showing signs of being extinguished? Could it be that he has already suffered a serious injury? Great Emperor Cloudrock of the Panwu Dao court revealed a shocked expression. On the other hand, the lawless saber he spoke of caused the hearts of all the other imperial emperors to shake. They seemed to have never imagined that Shang Xian would actually bring a heaven-defying imperial artifact like the lawless saber with him. The most inconceivable thing was that even with the lawless blade, Shang Xian was showing signs of falling. If this was the case, then how intense and terrifying would the chaotic battle at the ruined door be? The monarchs could no longer remain calm. It wasn't that their mental states were lacking, and it was because this chaotic battle involved a chaotic treasure, so they had no choice but to pay close attention to it. I wonder who will obtain this fortune. Alas, no matter what, casualties are bound to be unavoidable. I only hope that this chaotic battle can come to an end as soon as possible. In my opinion, Mi Weia, Jing Tianan, Ling Hongzhuang, Wenyu, Xian Juyin, these 5 people have the highest chance of obtaining this fortune. The monarchs discussed and analyzed. How can you forget the remnants of Fangtsuan Mountain? Empress Huling suddenly said in a cold voice, Of course this time, no matter how fierce he is, I'm afraid he can't escape. Many monarchs' expressions changed subtly. It made sense. He'd killed Huangfu Xiaonong's group and Kong Zhao's group, and he'd probably alarmed numerous formidable figures since long ago. In addition, he was the descendant of Fangtsuan Mountain. As long as he appeared in Buzhou Mountain, he was bound to be the enemy of many strong people. I don't want him to die like this. The Juying Emperor of Wilderness Taoist Court's voice was faint and meaningful. The monarch's eyes flickered. They all knew that Lin Sun could become a real bait and play a role when the ancient immortal forbidden area came to an end. After all, a dead bait was of limited use. For example, the descendants of Wilderness Taoist Court, Qiankuan Dao Court, and Panwu Dao Court received orders that when dealing with Lin Sun, it was best to capture him alive. All this was to make it easier for Lin Sun, the bait, to attract the big fish. Unfortunately, neither the Empress Huoling nor the Juying Emperor could have imagined that the battle that was going on was completely different from what they had imagined and speculated. What, when you of my clan is dead? A monarch cried out involuntarily, which attracted the attention of all the people present. Just now, it was said that when you had a chance to compete for that good fortune. But in the blink of an eye, such a peerless genius had died. And this was just the beginning. In the following time, one after another, the life lamps were extinguished, all of which belonged to peerless geniuses who were extremely favored. The martial monarchs did not dare to imagine how terrifying the bloody battle that took place on Mount Buzhou would be. Until they saw the life lamps of Jing Tianan, Ling Hongzhuang and others dim, all the monarchs' hearts tightened. So far, most of the peerless geniuses who were unanimously favored by them seemed to have signs of death, which was undoubtedly too shocking. What exactly happened in that battle? How could this be? Suddenly, the Cloudy Rock Emperor spoke again, full of disbelief. Everyone looked over and was also shocked. The lamp that represented Mi Wuya was also showing signs of extinguishing. For a moment there was silence. Every monarch was shocked and doubtful. There were too many puzzles and doubts surging in their hearts. Even someone as powerful as Mi Wuya had encountered a life-threatening danger. This was undoubtedly too terrifying. It could also be seen that this chaotic battle must be full of great variables. Could it be the remnant of Fangtsuan Mountain? Someone suddenly said. Immediately, the Empress Huoling, the Juying Emperor, and the others frowned, feeling rather displeased. He's alone. How could he have such heaven-defying power? A chaotic battle must be filled with conflict and killing. Lin Sun may be able to perform very well in the chaotic battle, but it's absolutely the world's biggest joke to say that all of this is due to him. Everyone discussed and directly excluded Lin Sun. The reason was that they did not think that Lin Sun had the power to suppress the crowd and sweep away all obstacles. Not to mention Lin Sun, even if it was Mi Wuya, they would also think so. No matter what, when all of this ends, the truth will surface. Taishu Hong took a deep breath and said slowly. At this time, there was only about a month left before the ancient immortal forbidden zone came to an end. All the monarchs had their own thoughts. In fact, to them, what was the truth was not too important. What was important was who would obtain the chaos treasure. Similarly, when the ancient immortal forbidden zone came to an end, the real show had just begun. Plop! After Lin Sun entered the gate of defeat, he was exhausted and lay on the platform under his feet. There was a kind of indescribable exhaustion and pain all over his body, both inside and out. Although this battle finally allowed him to enter the gate of defeat, he paid a great price for it. His physical strength was completely exhausted, and his broken body was about to crack. At this time, he could not even lift a finger. Tiredness hit his mind like a tide, making him fall into a feeling of emptiness and numbness. In the end, Lin Sun could not bear the attack of exhaustion and fell into a coma. Inside the gate of defeat, the Order of the Great Way turned into countless magnificent light rain, flashing enough to make the Emperor realm tremble. Magically, when the power of the Order of the Great Way approached Lin Sun, it was dissolved by the platform under his body. Not long after Lin Sun lost consciousness and fell into a coma, the platform carried Lin Sun to the deeper part of the Gate of Defeat, as if it was summoned. Chapter 2102. Inside the Gate of Ruin, the power of order intertwined like rainbows, covering the sky and the earth, and the breath of destruction was surging like a tide. This was a scene that was enough to make people in the Emperor realm desperate. It was no exaggeration to say that without the protection of that Taoist platform, powerful people in the Emperor realm were doomed to die if they rushed in. When Jun Huan came, he retreated because of the difficulties, and Ji Xian, who was unwilling to give up, suffered terrible killing and was suppressed to this day. His consciousness was muddled and he almost died. Clatter, the Taoist platform carried Lin Sun, like a boat shuttling on the river formed by the order of the Great Way, resolving the power of order that could kill people in the Emperor realm one by one. Along the way there was no danger. After a long time, a stone wall suddenly appeared in front of him, high into the sky, blocking the way. This stone wall was smooth, and its surface was surging with obscure and mysterious power of the Great Way, which turned into various visions of the law, looming on the stone wall. And in the corner of the stone wall there was a hole. Originally, this stone wall gave people the feeling of perfection, but the appearance of this hole destroyed the charm of perfection, showing the scene of the Great Way is incomplete. The Taoist platform stopped here and stayed motionless. On the Taoist platform, Lin Sun, who fell into a coma, also stayed motionless. Only the power of order in the sky was flying and flowing in this mysterious world, and the atmosphere was mysterious and quiet. A few days passed. The Taoist platform remained motionless, and Lin Sun showed no sign of waking up. Even Ji Xian, hidden in the shrouding talisman, and the sword spirit, leaf, dormant in Lin Sun's hair, fell into silence after entering the Gate of Ruin. Their power was completely imprisoned, and they couldn't perceive anything here at all. And in this Gate of Ruin, it seemed that the passage of time could not be felt at all. Until half a month later, above the sky, a taboo breath of disaster suddenly emerged. If this happened in the outside world, it would have attracted the attention of countless horrible people, because the breath was too taboo and terrible, like the end of the world, which made people desperate. But in this world of the Gate of Ruin, with the appearance of this taboo breath of disaster, the power of order of the Great Way covering the void seemed to be stimulated and suddenly soared into the sky. Boom! A dull rumble resounded in the depths of the sky. The energy of tribulation that seemed like a taboo was visibly on the verge of collapse, and it was obliterated by the energy of the order of the Grand Tao that covered this world. At the same time, the fingertips of Lin, who had been motionless for half a month, trembled slightly. Following that, a shocking power of transformation appeared on his severely damaged and blood-stained body. It was like a withered tree coming back to life. In Lin Sun's body, the cultivation that had been dried up and the essence, qi, and spirit that had been exhausted also emerged at this moment. Like a gurgling stream, it constantly emerged in every part of Lin Sun's body. His limbs, bones, meridians, internal organs, apertures, bones, and skin. Everything was like dry land that was being watered by the spring rain, and it glowed with strands of brand new vitality. This transformation lasted for 7 days. 7 days later, Lin Sun's injuries on the surface of his body had long been healed. His skin was crystal clear and clean, and every inch of his pores was flowing with wonderful Tao runes, as if he was reborn. His body rumbled like thunder. It was the boiling divine power that was rushing like the Yangtze River, washing Lin Sun's internal organs, limbs, and bones. If one looked carefully, his meridians were pliable and tough, as if they were polished from divine jade, and they were branded with strands of the laws of the Grand Tao. They were like dense striations that were suffused with rays of light, and every single one of his bones was jade white, as if they were made from divine iron. They were like sharp blades that contained mysterious bone markings of the Grand Tao, Taoist bone tattoo. In his 5 internal organs, 5 doppelgangers of the Grand Tao were sitting, and each of them was like a god, bathed in 5 kinds of divine light, green, white, yellow, black, and red, and each of them was faintly psychic. And his chaotic whole, which was like the embryonic form of a world, had already turned into a world, and the surging and boundless spiritual power turned into mountains, rivers, and all things in the world were embellished in it. Chaotic whole boundary. In addition, in his sea of consciousness, his primordial spirit turned into a Dharma form of God, which was exactly the same as his appearance. It stood in the void, surrounded by various grand Tao laws, solemn, shining brightly, illuminating the vast sea of consciousness. Divine awareness condensed, and Dharma form was born. It was called the Soul Divine Image. No matter if it was the Taoist bone tattoo, chaotic whole boundary, or condensing the Soul Divine Image, these were all characteristics that only quasi-emperors possessed. Obviously, Lin Sun had broken through and stepped foot into the quasi-emperor realm while he was in this silent and unconscious state. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun's consciousness gradually awoke from the chaos, and it was like he'd just awakened from a dream. At the first possible moment, he noticed that his body had undergone a tremendous transformation. As he sensed the completely unfamiliar and boundlessly terrifying energy within his body, Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned, and he stared blankly for a long time before he realized that unknowingly, he'd actually broken through the scope of the Saint Realm and become a quasi-emperor. But Lin Sun couldn't be bothered to be pleasantly surprised, and there was only nervousness in his heart. Did I step foot onto the supreme path of the Tao after breaking through this time? A supreme quasi-emperor was like the difference between the heavens and the earth when compared to an ordinary quasi-emperor. He pondered hard and recalled. Some fragmented and blurry scenes seemed as if they were fished out from the sea of memories, and the scenes from 7 days ago started to flash within his mind. On that day, the forbidden tribulation appeared in the depths of the sky, yet it was dispersed by the energy of the grand Tao within the door of ruin. This should be the tribulation of breaking through that belongs to me. Lin Sun's heart shook, and he finally understood. 7 days ago, a supreme tribulation had appeared in the depths of the sky, and it wanted to kill him, but it was dispersed by the invisible energy of the grand Tao that covered this place. On the other hand, he had overcome this terrifying calamity in a muddle-headed state, causing his body to undergo an earth-shattering transformation, and also allowing him to leap from the Saint Realm to the peak of the Quasi-Emperor Realm in one go. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun silently sensed the completely unfamiliar energy within his body. Finally, he let out a long sigh as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He completely determined that the cultivation that he possessed was absolutely not something that an ordinary quasi-emperor could compare to. It should be known that Lin Sun had fought with a quasi-emperor a long time ago, and the number of quasi-emperors that had died in his hands could not be counted with 10 fingers. Moreover, before he came to participate in the Tao discussion gathering, he had fought with many quasi-emperors of the Xuanji Tao sect by himself. This allowed him to have an extremely deep understanding of the power that an ordinary quasi-emperor possessed. Like the cultivation that he possessed at the moment, whether it was the degree of richness or the high quality, was completely incomparable to an ordinary quasi-emperor. If the power of an ordinary quasi-emperor was compared to a lake, then the power possessed by a quasi-emperor would be like a vast ocean. I released my cultivation in the extreme killing, and welcomed the great tribulation in the extreme emptiness. In this way, it can be regarded as the extreme transformation and nirvana. Lin Sun murmured in his heart. An unprecedented sense of satisfaction welled up in his heart. If it was just to enter the gate of defeat, he didn't need to use other means at all. He only needed to display the forbidden passing magical ability, and no one could stop him. But this was not what Lin Sun wanted. At that time, he was already at the perfection of the Saint King realm, but no one could really force him to the point of releasing his strength to the extreme. This always made him feel a little regretful, and that unparalleled bloody battle made his wish come true. He fought to the extreme to prove himself. All the people in the world, of the same generation, are no match for me. At least on the road to the Saint Realm, my Tao can be said to be invincible. I just don't know how it is compared with senior brother Xian Kong in the past. Lin Sun pondered. Before long, he opened his eyes and saw the power of the Order of the Great Way flying all over the sky like a bright rainbow. This was the inside of the Gate of Defeat. At this point, Lin Sun was completely sober. He saw the platform under him and the stone wall on one side. He sat cross-legged and looked around. Where was the treasure of chaos that attracted the attention of all the people in the world, hidden? Lin Sun observed carefully, not daring to leave the platform or release his spiritual awareness, lest he touch the power of the Order of the Great Way nearby and lead to a fatal disaster. After a long time, Lin Sun frowned a little. There was no treasure of chaos here. In addition to countless dense power of the Order, there was the stone wall beside him and the platform under his buttocks. Platform? Suddenly, Lin Sun seemed to realize something. He stood up from sitting cross-legged and looked down at the platform under his feet. This platform was extremely magical. It ignored the power of the Order between heaven and earth, and could freely shuttle in and out of the Gate of Defeat. Not long ago, it was because of the power of the brand left by senior sister Jun Huan that Lin Sun had a unique resonance with this platform, which led to the Siege of the Heroes. But it was also this platform that gave Lin Sun the opportunity to enter the Gate of Defeat. However, whether it was him or Mi Wuya or the others, they had never thought that this platform might be the treasure of chaos. Was it really this platform? Lin Sun sensed it with his spiritual awareness and mind. After a while, a wisp of obscure willpower quietly transmitted a wave of fluctuation. I am the spirit of Mount Buzhou, formed by the willpower of Mount Buzhou. A long time ago, a woman told me with a secret method that someone would take me away in the future. I think it must be you. Mount Buzhou spirit. Lin Sun was shocked. At the same time, he guessed that the woman mentioned by Mount Buzhou spirit must be senior sister Jun Huan. No wonder, Lin Sun murmured. Suddenly, he realized something and said, "Could it be that you are the treasure of chaos?" The platform flowed with obscure light and fluctuated. No, I am just a willpower. The real treasure of chaos is this Mount Buzhou. Lin Sun's eyes widened as if he was struck by lightning, revealing a look of disbelief. Mount Buzhou? The treasure of chaos? Before this, almost everyone knew about Mount Buzhou. But who would have thought that Mount Buzhou was the treasure of chaos that they had dreamed of? I don't know the true face of the sacred mountain because I am in it. Lin Sun's mood fluctuated. Chapter 2103. In fact, it was no wonder that people couldn't think of it. It should be known that Buzhou Mountain was extremely vast and boundless. It was covered with a terrible atmosphere of destruction and many great dangers. Walking within it was like walking on an ant, causing one to feel tiny. Who would have thought that such a huge mountain would be a treasure? Lin Sun suddenly remembered something. By the way, you just said that you want me to take you away? The Taoist platform was silent for a long time, and then conveyed a thought. If I fall into your hands, I'm afraid it will be a disaster rather than a blessing. What do you mean? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. You are too weak. The answer of mountain spirit of Buzhou made Lin Sun feel depressed. He had heard such words more than once. There was only pure mockery and disdain. They were wondering when such a weak successor like him had appeared in Fangtsuan Mountain. Some were disappointed, thinking that the successor of Mountain Heart should not be so weak. The answer of Mountain Spirit of Buzhou was more direct. Because you are too weak, you can't sense my willpower at all outside the gate, and you can't know that I told you at that time that you can take me away without entering this place. Hearing this, Lin Sun was stunned. In other words, while Mount Buzhou was following him outside the ruined gate, as long as he left, he would be able to take away Mount Buzhou, the Chaos Treasure? Thinking of this, Lin Sun was speechless for a while and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It turned out that it was superfluous for him to fight for the qualification to enter the ruined gate after a long time of bloody struggle. It was also at this time that Lin Sun finally understood that this must be the arrangement of Senior Sister Juanhuan in order to make it easier for him to take away this great fortune after arriving at Buzhou Mountain. Unfortunately, he didn't understand it. However, Lin Sun didn't regret it. If it weren't for this extremely bloody battle, how could he prove himself and break through the realm? It's also because of your breakthrough that you can barely sense my existence and communicate with me at this time, Mountain Spirit of Buzhou said, but in my opinion, the power you have at this time is still too weak. The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched. Being hit by the willpower of Mountain Buzhou, he couldn't help but feel depressed. Although I, Lin, am weak now, I may not be like this in the future. Lin Sun took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "As for what you said, I don't take it seriously." His identity had already been exposed, and he had killed countless descendants of powerful forces in this forbidden zone. Moreover, there were many old monsters at the Emperor Realm standing guard outside the forbidden zone. If it was out of apprehension and fear, how could he have done this? Compared to that woman from back then, you are far too inferior. However, since she asked you to come here, I will naturally not refuse to leave with you. The words of Buzhou Mountain Spirit were harsh, but they cheered Lin Sun up. However, with your current strength, it's utterly impossible for you to control and utilize Mount Buzhou, and I'm only a strand of will, so I'm bound to be unable to help you. Mountain Spirit Buzhou continued, "Now, are you sure you want to take me with you?" Lin answered without hesitation, "Of course." He did not expect the Chaos Treasure to be of any help to him. Instead, he saw it as a cornerstone to rebuild Fangtsuan Mountain. Apart from this, he had no other requests. This mountain is incomplete, so it's called Buzhou. The voice of Mountain Spirit Buzhou sounded. The missing piece of God's stone is the core origin of this mountain. All the power of the great Tao covering this mountain is born from it. Where is the missing piece of God's stone now? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. Mountain Spirit Buzhou was silent for a moment and said, "Under your feet." Lin Sun was stunned. After a while, he realized that Mountain Spirit Buzhou was talking about this platform. Mountain Spirit Buzhou said, "The gap on this stone wall is the birthplace of this God's stone. If you take this God's stone away, you can take the whole Buzhou Mountain with you." Lin Sun looked at the stone wall and found that there was indeed a hole in the corner, the size of which was the same as the platform under his feet. Obviously, Mountain Spirit Buzhou was not lying. "When you leave with this God's stone, my power will fall into silence. Unless your power is strong enough to wake me up, the real mystery of Buzhou Mountain will be revealed to you." Mountain Spirit Buzhou's voice was emotionless. It was just a transformation of a strand of will, so it could only be regarded as psychic, but not real wisdom. Understood. Lin Sun nodded. "But I don't plan to leave yet." He had just woken up. Although he had confirmed that he had stepped into the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm, he was completely unfamiliar with this power. He needed time to temper and control it. A brand new realm meant a brand new power and Tao. After attaining the Quasi-Emperor realm, the power Lin Sun grasped was infinitely close to the real Emperor realm. But how strong it was, even he himself had no idea. Therefore, he still needed time to meditate and understand. Mountain Spirit Buzhou did not refuse. Lin Sun immediately sat cross-legged on the platform and began to meditate, comprehending the mysteries of the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm. Quasi-Emperor was above the Saint realm and infinitely close to the Emperor realm. This realm was divided into 3 heavens. The 3 types of cultivation of a cultivator, body refining, soul refining, and chi refining, would condense the divine fire of the Great Path. It was also called the 3 heavens of Quasi-Emperor. Condensing one kind of divine fire of the Great Path could be regarded as the first level of Quasi-Emperor. Condensing 2 kinds of divine fire of the Great Path was the second level of Quasi-Emperor. When the 3 types of divine fire of the Great Path were condensed, It was called the third level of quasi-emperor. 99% of the quasi-emperor existences in the world were stuck in the first level of quasi-emperor. The reason was that these cultivators, from the beginning of Tao cultivation, focused on qi refining, soul refining, or body refining. Because the path of Tao they pursued was limited to one type, even if in the future they also began to cultivate the other two paths of Tao. But after reaching the quasi-emperor realm, because of the foundation of the Great Path, they would be stuck in the first level and unable to break through. The quasi-emperors that Lin Sun had killed before were almost all in the first level of quasi-emperor. And different from ordinary quasi-emperors, the current Lin Sun was already a peak quasi-emperor. Taking care of the cultivation of three paths of Tao, he had long merged the three paths of Tao. This also made him different from other peak quasi-emperors. At the first level of quasi-emperor, the divine fire of the Great Path condensed in his body had simultaneously merged the mysteries of the three paths of Tao, body refining, qi refining, and soul refining. It should be known that ordinary peak quasi-emperors, no matter what kind of divine fire they condensed, when they were at the first level of quasi-emperor, the divine fire of the Great Path condensed could only merge one of the three paths of Tao. As such, it could be seen how different Lin Sun's cultivation was at the moment. It was like he was completely different. However, this did not mean that Lin Sun's cultivation had leaped to become a peak quasi-emperor at the third level, but the divine fire of the Great Path that he condensed was too strange. Lin Sun noticed this as well. He carefully thought about it for a long time, but he could only make a vague judgment. Although his divine fire of the Great Path seemed a little different, it was unique, and the power it gathered was extraordinarily strong. At the quasi-emperor realm, I can master the incomplete laws of the emperor realm. This is also the reason why they are called quasi-emperors. Lin Sun pondered as he stabilized and experienced his own cultivation. And I'm cultivating the Great Way Golden Court scripture. With my current strength, it's sufficient for me to start cultivating the profundities of the five virtues state. If I'm able to cultivate it successfully, the five clones will possess a consciousness and cultivation that isn't inferior to the main body. At that time, if I am besieged again, I can exert the combat power of 6 people. As time passed, Lin Sun gradually and thoroughly immersed himself in cultivation. In the ancient immortal forbidden zone, deep in a mountain range, at the bottom of an inconspicuous mountain, there was a natural underground cave. In less than 10 days, the trip to the ancient immortal forbidden zone will come to an end. Xie Yuhua, who had just woken up from her cultivation, murmured, "Time really flies. I wonder how Brother Jean is doing now. He is acting alone. I wonder if he can snatch the great creation related to the treasure of chaos." Leng Xiujiao, who was beside her, looked worried. "He can definitely do it." Jean Tian Xuanyue's beautiful eyes were filled with determination. Beside the three of them, there was a pool filled with cold air. Snow-white waves tumbled in the pool, and bursts of refreshing fragrance filled the air. This was an incomparably mysterious pool, and the cold air that gushed out of it was filled with unimaginable power of the Great Path. Cultivating here allowed the three of them to obtain unexpected benefit. In fact, after entering the ancient immortal forbidden zone, the three of them soon met each other and began to act together in this dangerous place. They were not greedy for any opportunities, but the first thing they thought of was how to protect themselves and leave the ancient immortal forbidden zone alive. Then, they accidentally discovered this underground cave, as well as this natural and wondrous cold pond. From that day onwards, the three of them hid here and concentrated on their cultivation. Until now, they had not left even half a step, so they did not encounter any danger. However, seeing that the time of the end of the ancient immortal forbidden zone was approaching, the three of them could not help but think of Lin Sun and worry about him. "Why don't we take a walk outside and find out some information?" Leng Xiujia suggested. Jintian Xianyue and Xieyuhua looked at each other and agreed after pondering for a while. Immediately, the three of them left the underground cave together. However, not long after they left, they encountered two powerhouses who were searching for opportunities in the mountains. It was a man and a woman. The man was strong with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, and his eyes were frightening. The woman was wearing a green dress, and her appearance was enchanting. Both of them came from other worlds in the starry sky. When they noticed the figures of Jintian Xianyue and the others from afar, their hearts trembled, and they revealed vigilant expressions. But when they recognized Jintian Xianyue and the others, they relaxed and more or less revealed a trace of disdain. How could they not know that if it was not for Lin Sun's protection in the Xianwang mystery realm, the three of them would not be qualified to enter the ancient immortal forbidden zone? Chapter 2104. Hand over your treasures and get lost. The strong man was called Qing Xiang. His eyes were cold as he glanced at Jintian and Xianyue. Brother Qing, they are Lin Sun's friends. The woman in green next to Qing Xiang reminded him in a low voice. What are you afraid of? Lin Sun is indeed invincible among us when he killed the heroes in front of the Gate of Ruins. But when the trip to the forbidden ancient immortal realm comes to an end, how can those emperors let him go? Qing Xiang said disdainfully. That's true. Even if he is invincible in this realm, even if he can get the chaos treasure, he will definitely suffer when he leaves. The woman in green thought for a while and her worries disappeared. The contempt and disdain displayed by the two of them caused Jintian, Xianyu, and the others to be infuriated. But at the same time, they were confused. Lin Sun? Why did the name sound so familiar, and why did the two men think they were Lin Sun's friends? The reason was that they had been hiding ever since they entered the forbidden ancient immortal realm. They knew nothing about what happened in the forbidden ancient immortal realm. Naturally, they didn't know that Lin Sun was the Jin Di they were familiar with. What are you waiting for? Hand over the treasures. Qing Xiang scolded. His eyebrows were full of impatience and killing intent. Do you still expect Lin Sun to come and save you now? The woman in green's expression also became cold. The hearts of Jintian, Xianyu, and the others sank. They had just come out from their hibernation grounds, yet they had already encountered such a calamity, causing them to be caught unprepared. At this moment, a calm voice sounded, "Brother Lin won't come, but I can help him." A figure came from afar. His eyes were as clear as a lake and his breath was ordinary. But Qing Xiang and Xianyue shivered and their faces changed dramatically. Let's go. Without hesitation, the two fled with all their strength. The man who was walking over from the void casually pointed at the void twice. Puff, puff. Thousands of meters away, Qing Xiang and the woman in green fell from the void. Their heads were pierced by the terrifying finger force and they died suddenly. He didn't even have time to react before he died. Jintian, Xianyu and the others gasped. A simple strike had killed two experts who were qualified to enter the forbidden ancient immortal zone. This was undoubtedly terrifying. At the same time, Jintian, Xianyu, and the others recognized the newcomer. Mi Wuya, the unparalleled legend who had dominated the All Heavens King Saint list for 600 years. However, Jintian, Xianyue, and the others could not figure out why Mi Wuya, the core heir of the Panwu Dao court, would take the initiative to help them. Quasi-Emperor Realm. No, this is the pinnacle Quasi-Emperor Realm. At the same time, Golden Sky Mystic Moon made another discovery. He sensed that Mi Wuya's aura no longer belonged to the Saint Realm. It had become even more terrifying and unfathomable. In another 10 days, the trip to the Forbidden Zone will be over. If you see Brother Lin, tell him that if he has a chance to escape, he must act immediately. Otherwise, Mi Wuya thought for a moment, then turned around and left after saying that. Otherwise, he did not say what it was. But as long as one wasn't a fool, they would be able to understand the meaning behind it. However, Golden Sky, Mystic Moon, and the others still could not figure out why Mi Wuya thought that they knew Lin Sun. Who exactly was Lin Sun? Unfortunately, before they could ask, Mi Wuya's figure had already disappeared into the vast world far away. Could it be Brother Jean? Leng Xiujia could not help but ask. How is that possible? Brother Jean has already been confirmed to be the successor of the origin returning Dao Court in the black-yellow Dao Court. Could it be that those great figures made a mistake? Xie Yuhua frowned. Lin Sun. I remember now. This person caused a huge ruckus in the Kunlun ruins back then and caused rivers of blood to flow. He was utterly defeated. Golden Sky, Mystic Moon's clear eyes lit up. No wonder Lin Sun's name sounded so familiar. However, Lin Sun didn't participate in the Dao discussion this time. Wait, could it really be young master? Golden Sky, Mystic Moon's heart trembled as she realized something. She thought that Lin Sun's true identity should be Yu Xian. However, she suddenly realized that since Jean Di's identity was impersonated by young master, could Yu Xian's identity be impersonated as well? Yu Xian. Jean Di. Lin Sun, Golden Sky, Mystic Moon murmured. When she recalled Mi Wuya's words before he left, a rough judgment appeared in her mind. The young master that she held in high esteem was most likely Lin Sun. I heard from Mi Wuya that the young master might have already obtained that chaos treasure. Mi Wuya said. Golden Sky, Mystic Moon's heart was filled with excitement and she could not help but say, "Come, let's continue forward and find out more information." As the deadline to leave the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone approached, the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone was not peaceful. Huge movements were happening in different areas. The news that Mi Wuya had broken through to become a peak quasi-emperor quickly spread like wildfire and was noticed by many people. Following that, it was also said that Hua Xingli and Ling Hongzhuang had also stepped into the peak quasi-emperor stage. For a time, it attracted the attention of countless people. Breaking through in the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone can avoid the killing of the Forbidden Great Tribulation. When this news spread, it immediately caused an uproar among all the powerhouses. It should be known that if it was on the starry ancient path, any powerhouse who wanted to step into the peak quasi-emperor stage would have a slim chance of success, and the chances of success were extremely slim. Even a monstrous genius with extraordinary talent and a terrifying foundation could suffer under such a peerless calamity. For example, in the primordial world, quasi-emperors were a dime a dozen and it was not uncommon. However, the number of peak quasi-emperors was extremely small and they were almost as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Even in the 6 major Dao courts and the 10 major battle clans, the number of descendants of peak quasi-emperors was extremely limited. In short, there was a world of difference between the peak of the quasi-emperor stage and the peak stage. As such, when those powerhouses found out that breaking through in the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone could avoid the killing of the Forbidden Great Tribulation, they were extremely excited. As it turned out, the rumors were not false. In the following time, those peerless powerhouses who possessed the strength of peak Sage King realm and could be called the overlords of their realm broke through one after another and forged the Tao of peak quasi-emperor. I wonder if Lin Sun has broken through. I'd like to fight him again. After some people set foot in the peak quasi-emperor realm, they became restless again and fixed their eyes on Lin Sun. Save it, even I can break through, let alone that freak. He'll be courting death if he goes. More people wisely gave up the idea of fighting Lin Sun. The bloody battle that took place in front of the Gate of Ruin was still vivid in their minds. It was like a shadow that shrouded the hearts of these powerhouses, and they would never be able to get rid of it in this lifetime. Is this Mount Buzhou? Jintian Xianyue, Xieyuhua, and Leng Xiujia looked at the vast mountain that was shrouded in a destructive aura from afar and were secretly shocked. They had come all the way here to verify one thing. This is too terrifying. I really wonder where the so-called Gate of Ruin is? Leng Xiujia's expression was solemn. Should we go? Xieyuhua looked at Jintian Xianyue. Jintian Xianyue was hesitant as well. Mount Buzhou hid great danger and terror, and it wouldn't be worth it if they were unable to find Lin Sun and lost their lives there instead. There's no need to go, he'll definitely come out himself. Suddenly, a voice resounded. A monk in monk robes with a gentle appearance and a bright forehead appeared out of thin air. Ling Kezi. Jintian Xianyue and the others recognized him with a single glance. Ling Kezi seemed to want to dispel the worries in their hearts, and he added, "I'm waiting for him, as well to return some spoils of the battle to him." Jintian Xianyue and the others looked at each other with vigilance. Ling Kezi didn't explain further, and he glanced at the surroundings and said, "Mount Buzhou is extremely huge, but no matter who heads to the Gate of Ruin, that person will definitely pass through here. Similarly, if Lin Sun returns from the Gate of Ruin, then he'll definitely appear in this area." Suddenly, Ling Kezi's pupils constricted, and he frowned. He still hasn't given up on his evil intentions? Or perhaps he thinks that he has no need to fear that fellow just because he's at the peak quasi-emperor realm. He flicked his sleeve. An expanse of light flowed and enveloped Jintian Xianyue and the others within it, and then he sent a voice transmission in a low voice. "Don't make a sound." The hearts of Jintian Xianyue and the others shook, and they raised their eyes to look over. Only now did they notice that numerous figures had appeared extremely far away, and all of them possessed extremely terrifying auras. Shockingly, the person in the lead was Jing Tianan. Jing Tianan intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the place where Ling Kezi stood. After that, he took a deep breath and gazed at the boundless and mighty Mount Buzhou as he said, "Everyone, are all of you sure you want to come with me? All of you ought to be very clearly aware of how terrifying Lin Sun's strength would be if he steps foot into the peak quasi-emperor realm as well." There were another 5 experts by Jing Tianan's side, and they were 3 core disciples of the Universe Dao Court and 2 core disciples of the Panwu Dao Court. Amongst them was Shang Xian, who'd once had his lawless saber seized by Lin Sun. Even though he'd been heavily injured by Lin Sun in that incomparably bloody battle not long ago, he hadn't perished. This time, after stepping into the peak quasi-emperor realm, he intended to take back his lawless saber. Hearing Jing Tianan's question, Shang Xian said expressionlessly, "If the situation goes awry, I have my own means to deal with it." Everyone else acquiesced. "Well, if you're unfortunate enough to meet with misfortune, don't blame me for not reminding you," Jing Tianan said in a deep voice. Sure enough, they've come for Lin Sun. Seeing this, Ling Kezi's eyes glowed with wisdom, and he thought to himself, since ancient times, the greatest calamity on the road of cultivation is perhaps the word heart thief. Greed, anger, obsession, hatred, love, evil, desire. How many people can avoid the scourge of greed? Thinking of this, he sighed inwardly. He didn't say anything more. Chapter 2105. It was boundless like Mount Buzhou, and it was suffused with the aura of destruction. It was mysterious and dangerous. However, along with the rumbling that sounded like thunder, the entire Mount Buzhou started to tremble, and it caused the heavens and the earth to shake. When looked at from afar, it was like an ancient dragon that was slumbering on the ground had awakened. The pupils of Jing Tianan and the others constricted, while their expressions changed slightly. "What's going on?" "Rumble." The rumbling grew louder and louder, and it shook the heavens and the earth. The aura of destruction that covered Mount Buzhou was visibly retreating like the tide. In merely a short moment, Mount Buzhou seemed as if a layer of gauze had been removed, and the aura of destruction that covered it had completely vanished. It revealed its true appearance to the world for the first time. And then, a myriad of strands of auspicious light fluttered, a myriad of strands of divine radiance descended, and strands of chaotic aura flowed and surged on Mount Buzhou like a river in the 9 heavens. Every single rock flickered with the aura of divinity, and was branded with the traces of the Grand Tao, and they developed different miraculous phenomena. waves of melodious Tao tunes that sounded like the sounds of nature resounded, and it intoxicated everyone in an instant. Jing Tianan and the others were stunned, and they were flabbergasted. What sort of divine mountain is this? They'd seen numerous famous mountains and paradise in the world, but none could compare to Mount Buzhou before them. It was boundlessly large, bathed in auspicious light, interwoven with divine radiance, and suffused with chaotic aura. It was like the origin of the Grand Tao, and it stood towering in the sky like a bridge that connected the heaven dimension. Azure Light Mountain, where the dark heaven Tao court resided, could be considered as a top-rate auspicious paradise in the world, but it was inferior when compared to this mountain. Is this the true appearance of Mount Buzhou? Ling Kezi, Jintian Xianyue, and the others were shocked as well. An unknown and dangerous mountain had transformed into an extremely divine mountain in a short moment, and it was undoubtedly unbelievable. If we're able to establish a sect on this mountain, then we'll definitely be able to become a true Tao court force in the future. Jing Tiannan's eyes burned with desire. Shang Xian and the others couldn't remain calm as well. But right at this moment, someone suddenly noticed that the seemingly boundless Mount Buzhou had started to shrink incessantly. The divine radiance, auspicious rain, glow of the Tao, and chaotic aura that covered the sky were ceaselessly shrinking as well. This, whether it was Jing Tiannan's group or Ling Kezi's group, all of them were dumbfounded. No matter how they racked their brains, they couldn't figure out how such an unbelievable thing could happen. Then, under their very own eyes, the originally majestic and continuous Buzhou mountain grew to a height of 1,000 feet. Even though it had shrunk countless times, the current Buzhou mountain was still so resplendent. The aura it gave off was even more resplendent, and it dyed the sky a magnificent color. Immeasurable brilliance. Even with the cultivation levels of everyone present, when they looked over, they felt a stinging pain in their eyes and an oppressive feeling that made their bodies and minds tremble. It was as if they were witnessing the birth of a supreme divine mountain, and it caused them to have the impulse to kneel and prostrate themselves in worship. Who is that? Suddenly, someone noticed that a figure had appeared at the foot of Mount Buzhou that had become 3 kilometers tall. He was bathed in dazzling light of the Tao, and he was like a god that caused others to be utterly unable to see his appearance clearly. A figure walked over from afar. As he took a step forward, the 1,000-foot-tall Mount Buzhou began to shrink once more, and the light it emitted became more and more intense, more and more terrifying. The nearby heavens and earth wailed and trembled as if they were bowing their heads in submission. Could it be a god born in Mount Buzhou? Someone said in a trembling voice. At this moment, Jing Tianan and others were extremely depressed, and their expressions were changing constantly. Even they couldn't figure out why Mount Buzhou had become like this. They also couldn't see clearly who the figure walking over was. But they all had a bad feeling in their hearts. Ling Kezi seemed to have guessed something, and he was dumbfounded. The legendary Chaos Treasure, could it be Buzz? When Mount Buzhou became a meter tall, it swiftly transformed into a dazzling and resplendent stream of light that flashed into the figure that was walking over, and it vanished without a trace. The blazing aura between heaven and earth also disappeared with it. That figure's true appearance was finally seen clearly by everyone. He was dressed in a moon-white robe, and his black hair was casually tied behind his head, revealing a handsome and resolute face. He was tall and straight, and his temperament was tranquil like a drifting cloud. He was like the legendary banished immortal Lin Sun. Jing Tianan and others were surprised. It was really him. Child. Jing Tian Xuanyue's beautiful eyes lit up, and the mystery that had been lingering in her heart for a long time was finally solved. It turned out that the child was indeed Lin Sun. At this time, Xie Yuhua and Ling Xiujia also came to their senses, and they couldn't help revealing a strange expression. It turned out that the invincible legendary Lin Sun, who had killed so many people in front of the dilapidated gate, was really the Jin Di they knew. Child, be careful, those guys are going to attack you, Jintian Xianyue couldn't help saying. Although Ling Kezi had warned her not to make a sound, how could she watch Lin Sun be besieged? Ling Kezi was not angry, but revealed a strange expression and thought to himself, "Can't you see that this guy is already a Juxiu quasi-emperor?" Back in front of the dilapidated gate, he was able to fight against 10 people and was invincible, let alone now? However, Ling Kezi didn't say much. He also wanted to see what kind of terrifying combat strength Lin Sun had after advancing to the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Jintian Xuanyue's voice broke the silence, and also caused Jing Tianan, Shang Xian and others to change their expressions. Since they had all become Juxiu quasi-emperors, how could they not see that Lin Sun had also broken through to the next realm? Originally, they thought that they could suppress Lin Sun in terms of cultivation, so as to achieve the purpose of revenge. But now all of this was in vain. At this moment, when they saw Lin Sun's immortal-like figure appear, they couldn't help but think of the bloody battle in front of the dilapidated gate again. The bloody scenes were like watching flowers on horseback, which made their state of mind restless, and they faintly had the intention to retreat. Lin Sun nodded to Jintian Xianyue, then looked at Jing Tianan and others, and instantly guessed their intention of coming here. He couldn't help but curl his lips into a sarcastic smile. Unwilling to give up evil intentions? Or courting death? Lin Sun said indifferently, and the sarcasm in his voice was undisguised. He could understand. They were defeated by him and missed the opportunity to get the chaos treasure, which must have made them unwilling. Now that they had broken through to the next realm, they thought that they were strong enough to make a comeback and take revenge. Unfortunately, these guys' wishful thinking was wrong. Jing Tianan and others looked uncertain. In the past, if they were humiliated and despised like this, they would have killed people at the first time. But now they hesitated. In 10 days, the operation in the forbidden area of ancient immortals will be over. At that time, let's see how you will face those emperors outside. Taking a deep breath, Jing Tianan coldly spat out some harsh words and turned around to leave. Don't you think it's too late to leave now? When the voice sounded, Lin Sun flicked his finger. Qi. A sword qi swept out, intertwined with the obscure and mysterious power of laws of the Emperor realm, extremely fierce and gorgeous. The world seemed to be overshadowed by this sword qi. Jing Tianan's hair stood on end. He wanted to escape with all his strength, but this sword strike made him feel that there was no way to escape. Without hesitation, he went all out. His back swayed like a dragon, and the cyan light of law rushed out, which turned into a cyan bell, shining and protecting his whole body. This cyan bell was a supreme secret method Jing Tianan mastered after he stepped into the peerless Emperor realm. It was called the Cyan Dipper Indestructible Bell, and it had the ability to resist all kinds of magic. Its defensive power was amazing. Clang! The sword qi slashed down, but the cyan cauldron that Jing Tianan was so proud of was split open in an instant. There was a deafening explosion, and the divine light roared. Then, the cyan bell collapsed, and the sword qi chopped down with irresistible force. Puff! In Jing Tianan's incredulous and horrified eyes, his figure was split into two, blood splashing like a waterfall, and he died. When the sword qi fell, the earth was cut open, and it was unfathomable. One sword strike. The wind was gentle, killing the peerless genius Jing Tianan. The shocking and bloody scene caused Ling Kezi, Jintian Xianyue, and the others to be unable to help but gasp, and they were shocked on the spot. Go! The first reaction of Shang Xian and others when they saw this scene was to escape. Jing Tianan was a peerless genius in other starry skies, like a leader, and his strength was obvious to all. Now he had stepped into the peerless Emperor realm, but he was no match for Lin Sun's sword. How terrible was this! But Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Boom! In the sound of the explosion, countless Taishen sword qi swept out, tearing the sky, and turned into an overwhelming sword rain, whistling away. The void shook, and thousands of miles trembled. Under the crisscrossing sword chi, Shang Xian and the other three were all submerged in it, and then dense blood mist filled the sea of sword chi. The screams stopped as soon as they sounded. Only the clanging sword sound resounded through the sky and spread in all directions, lingering for a long time. Shang Xian and other 4 peerless quasi-emperors were killed with one strike. From the beginning to the end, Lin Sun just stood where he was and just waved his sleeve lightly. Soundless shock struck the hearts of Ling Kezi and the others like tidewater, and it caused them to be dazed and absent-minded. Killing a peerless quasi-emperor like killing a chicken. What kind of terrifying power did Lin Sun control after breaking through to the peerless quasi-emperor realm? When he was at the peerless Saint King realm, he had unparalleled power. Now, could he also be invincible among the peerless quasi-emperors? But at this time, Lin Sun's heart was calm. His road to the top had long been different from that of others, which allowed him to control unimaginably terrifying combat strength after stepping into the peerless quasi-emperor realm. If Lin Sun's previous cultivation was a long process of accumulation, then after becoming a quasi-emperor, it was an unprecedented release and sublimation. Of course, Lin Sun was still a little surprised that he could kill Jing Tiannan and others so easily. He did not expect that Jing Tiannan and others, who had already stepped into the peerless quasi-emperor realm, seemed to be far less outstanding and top-notch than when they were in the Saint realm. Chapter 2106. Buzhou Mountain disappeared, and the world suddenly became empty and vast. Jintian Xianyue, Ling Xiujiao, and Xie Yuhua sat cross-legged in different areas, meditating quietly and preparing for the breakthrough. There were only 10 days left before the end of the operation in the forbidden area of ancient immortals, but Jintian Xianyue and the others had not yet broken through. If they left now, they would undoubtedly miss an excellent opportunity to set foot on the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. After all, with the power of the Great Way in the forbidden area of ancient immortals, practitioners could easily avoid the taboo tribulation from the depths of the sky. Lin Sun and Ling Kezi stood in the distance. Ling Kezi had handed over the spoils to Lin Sun. In the unparalleled bloody battle in front of the Gate of Ruin, Lin Sun had killed more than 20 peerless figures, including Wen Yu and Feng Bailing, who had great backgrounds. This also made Ling Kezi collect extremely rich spoils, and there were as many as 16 emperor treasures. There were spears, Taoist swords, sabers, and divine seals, all of which could be said to be extremely magical and incomparable to ordinary emperor treasures. In addition, there were many storage treasures, which stored a large number of magic medicines, rare treasures, and spiritual materials. The value of these treasures was so great that it was immeasurable, because not only the number was huge, but also the value was extremely amazing. After counting for a while, Lin Sun handed 2 of the emperor treasures and a storage bag full of various treasures to Ling Kezi, and said, "I can't let you work in vain. These are for you." Ling Kezi firmly refused. "Brother Lin, you are doing me a disservice. As long as you take these treasures, no matter who you are, after leaving the forbidden area of ancient immortals, you will definitely be suppressed by the great forces behind the owners of these treasures." After a pause, he said with a strange expression, "Only you, Brother Lin, are not afraid of all this, so you'd better take them back." Lin Sun was stunned and said with a faint smile, "You mean I'm not afraid of the itch when there are too many lice?" Ling Kezi was embarrassed, and he stammered, "I was just speaking the truth. After all of these emperor artifacts have great origins, and they're either the ultimate treasures of sects or clans. Ordinary people really wouldn't dare to take possession of them." Lin Sun didn't insist. He put away the treasures and said, "In 10 days, the forbidden area of ancient immortals will come to an end. Now that you are with me, I'm afraid that you will be implicated when you leave." Before he could finish speaking, Ling Kezi raised his chest and said, "Don't worry, Brother Lin, I'm not afraid of being implicated." He appeared very confident. "That's good." Lin Sun looked at Ling Kezi thoughtfully. He thought of Xian Juyin, who had never been afraid to make friends with him. However, Xian Juyin had the support of the Xian family. Where did Ling Kezi get his confidence from? After thinking about it, Lin Sun shook his head. The monk was too tight-lipped. Even if he asked, he would not get any answers. A pitch-black tribulation cloud suddenly appeared in the sky, and a terrifying forbidden aura quietly spread out. Jintian Xianyue, who was sitting cross-legged, opened her eyes. She was going to pass the tribulation. Almost at the same time, the mysterious power of the Great Way rose between heaven and earth and rushed to the sky, covering the forbidden aura of the tribulation. Seeing this, Lin Sun withdrew his gaze. Under such circumstances, with Jintian Xuanyue's talent and foundation, she didn't have to worry about not being able to break through the realm. "Brother Lin, when you leave the forbidden area of ancient immortals, your identity will definitely be exposed, and everything you do here will be known by those emperors. Don't you worry?" Ling Kezi couldn't help asking. Lin Sun seemed too calm, as if he didn't worry about leaving at all. "Is it useful to worry?" Lin Sun asked. Ling Kezi was speechless for a while. "Don't worry. I'll just deal with it when it comes." Lin Sun's black eyes were deep and calm. He remembered what his third senior sister Ruo Su once said. As long as he could get that treasure of chaos, it would be okay even if his identity was exposed. This made Lin Sun have a strong premonition that those senior brothers and sisters of Mind and Heart Mountain would definitely not let him be in danger. Similarly, Lin Sun had some trump cards in his hand. Even if he encountered great danger, he was sure to get out of it. "Brother Lin." Ling Kezi took a deep breath and said, "Don't you want to know what I saw from you?" He seemed to have made up his mind. Lin Sun narrowed his black eyes slightly, looked at Ling Kezi with a serious face, and couldn't help laughing. "It's not too late to talk about these things later." Ling Kezi was stunned and couldn't help but feel anxious. "But if something happens to you when we leave the forbidden area of ancient immortals, won't it?" "Yes, if something happens to me, what's the use of knowing something? So, you should pray that nothing will happen to me." Lin Sun smiled and knocked on Ling Kezi's forehead. Ling Kezi scratched his head and wondered if Lin Sun had already seen that if he said what he saw, he would suffer an extremely terrible backfire. Or was he worried that it would affect his state of mind after knowing these things? "Don't let your imagination run wild. As long as I survive the coming catastrophe, I will definitely have a good talk with you." Lin Sun couldn't help but knock on Ling Kezi's forehead again. This young monk was docile and charming, very likable. One day later, Jintian Xianyue succeeded in breaking through and smoothly entered the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm. Her whole aura changed, becoming more and more ethereal and cold, like an ice fairy, beautiful as a painting. 3 days later, Leng Xiujia succeeded in breaking through. 7 days later, Xie Hua succeeded in breaking through. If this happened in the outside world, it would definitely cause a great sensation and attract countless strong people to watch the ceremony. After all, it was too difficult to set foot in the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm. But in the forbidden area of ancient immortals, as long as one's foundation was strong enough, it would be effortless to break through. In fact, almost all the strong people who were still alive in the forbidden area of ancient immortals had broken through and set foot in the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm. These days, Lin Sun's state of mind was clear, and he comprehended and tempered his own cultivation. There were no more accidents and twists and turns. In the outside world, a storm was coming. "There are only 3 days left," Tai Shuhong, the headmaster of the Yellow Heaven Court, sighed with emotion. During this period of time, they had been waiting here. Although they could not see what happened in the forbidden area of ancient immortals, they could roughly infer some things from the extinguished life lamp. Until now, the 12 core descendants of the primitive Taoist court who entered the forbidden area of ancient immortals were all annihilated. Of the 19 people from the Qiankuan Taoist court who entered, only 2 were left. Of the 15 people from the Panwu Taoist court, only 9 were left. Of the 17 people from the Yellow Heaven court, only 8 were left. Of the Demon's court, almost half of the core descendants of the 6 major Taoist courts were lost, such as the primitive Taoist court and the Qiankuan Taoist court, who were almost completely annihilated. From this, it could be inferred how dangerous, cruel and bloody the situation in the forbidden area of ancient immortals was. At present, there were only 29 life lamps that were still lit. This number was enough to make the heavens tremble. One must know that although there were only 108 experts who entered the forbidden area of ancient immortals, every single one of them could be said to be top-notch figures among the sage kings. But when it was almost over, there were only 29 people left. This number of casualties was undoubtedly too heavy. Just like in the past few days, the great figures at the Emperor realm all had gloomy expressions and were silent. Taishu Hong knew that these old fellows were holding back their anger. Yes, there are only 3 days left. The Fire Spirit Empress also sighed. Not to mention the forbidden area of ancient immortals, just the vicinity of Cloud Mountain can be said to be surging with undercurrents, and a storm is coming. The expressions of the Emperors present were somewhat subtle. A chaotic treasure attracted the attention of the heavens. In the dark, it was unknown how many old monsters were watching the movements here. Similarly, no one knew what kind of storm would erupt when the operation in the forbidden area of ancient immortals came to an end in 3 days. But there was no doubt that this storm was inevitable and was destined to erupt. At that time, it was unknown who was the hunter and who was the prey. How many people of our generation do you think are around Cloud Mountain? The Juyin martial emperor of the primitive Tao court suddenly asked. How can there be no fellow Taoists participating in such a storm? Someone laughed. Are they all fellow Taoists? That's not necessarily true. Someone said with a cold expression. No matter who it is, if they want to get involved in this storm, they have to think about the consequences. The Fire Spirit Empress said proudly. In a quiet valley extremely far away from here, the old monk and the black-robed youth's chess match had entered the most intense stage. But neither of them looked nervous at all. One was calmer and more composed than the other. The Fire Spirit Empress of the Heaven and Earth Tao Court really has a bad memory. If those ghosts from Fangtsuan Mountain came, she wouldn't need to think about the consequences, she mentioned. Does she think she's a chess player? The black-robed youth sneered. He wore a lotus crown and was dressed in a black robe. He looked like a young man, but his eyes contained endless vicissitudes of life. The divine reflection ancient sex divine void ancestor didn't hide his disdain. It's hard to say who is the chess piece and who is the chess player. This storm is full of variables. Sometimes a chess piece can also become a chess player, the old monk said indifferently. His face was thin and full of wrinkles. He wore a simple and clean monk robe. But in the dark world, he had a name that could change the expressions of all people. Nirvana Void Emperor Ancestor. Divine Void Emperor Ancestor picked up a chess piece and said, "Let's not talk about anything else. With such a big plan, I'm afraid there will be another Emperor Tao battle. Tao brother, are you prepared for this?" Nirvana Void Emperor Ancestor nodded and said indifferently, "I'll do my best and leave it to the heavens. If I win, I'll be lucky. If I lose, I'll be doomed." Me too. The young Divine Void Emperor Ancestor laughed. "But I'm different from you in one way." Nirvana Void Emperor Ancestor said, "What's different?" "For that chaos treasure, I dare to risk my life," Divine Void Emperor Ancestor said, and gently tapped the chess piece on the board. Chapter 2107. 3 days later. The day of the ancient immortal forbidden area's operation had come to an end. Beside Cloudy Mountain, the black-yellow Tao Court's sect master, Taishu Hong, stood up and looked at the great figures present with a solemn expression. At this point, there are some things that I have to make clear first. His words caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Taishu Hong said in a low voice, "Those who are hiding in the dark, listen up. No matter what happens today, my black-yellow Dao court will not get involved. If anyone dares to drag my black-yellow Dao court down, I, Taishu Hong, will be the first to not forgive him." His voice wasn't loud, but it resounded through the heavens and earth. Everyone present was already used to it. From the past until now, no matter what happened on the ancient path, the black-yellow Dao court's attitude had always been very clear: maintain neutrality. Let's begin. After Taishu Hong expressed the black-yellow Dao court's attitude, he didn't delay any longer and started to take action. Immediately, the Fire Spirit Empress of the Universe Dao Court, the Burning Sky Demon Emperor of the Myriad Demon Court, the Cloudy Rock Emperor of the Panwu Dao Court, and the Jian Battle Emperor of the Antiquity Dao Court all walked out. At the same time, whether it was in the open or in the dark, everyone's gazes converged on them. Rise! Taishu Hong waved his sleeve, and a Dao seal that flowed with monstrous golden divine radiance appeared. The Dao seal was branded with a layer of dense natural Dao markings. It was the black-yellow Dao Court's sect guarding treasure, the Golden Fire Seal. Following that, the Jian Battle Emperor took out the prehistoric Dao Court's 10,000 Spirit Auspicious Furnace, the Cloudy Rock Emperor took out the Panwu Dao Court's God-Slaying Dao Sword, the Fire Spirit Empress took out the Heaven and Earth Dao Court's Green Glass Rui, and the Burning Sky Demon Emperor took out the Demon's Dao Court's 3,000 Demon Scroll. Every single one of them could be called the sect guarding treasure, and their origins were shocking. Their might was even more unbelievably terrifying. Rumble, the sky was filled with the light of treasures, and it swept out, causing the heavens and the earth to tremble. On the cloud mountain barrier that was piled up with layers of white clouds, a huge crack was forcefully opened, and it led to the distant depths. A moment later, the crack that was opened rumbled continuously, and in the end, it turned into a slender and translucent passageway. When looked at from afar, it was like a river of stars lay there, and it stretched towards the boundless depths. All sorts of rays of light flowed on the passageway while divine radiance poured down like a waterfall, and it was a shocking scene. Countless gazes were fixed on the exit of this passage. Who exactly seized that chaotic treasure? Who was it that almost wiped out the successors of the primordial world and cosmic Dao Court? The answer was about to be revealed. At this moment, the atmosphere had become extremely oppressive. An invisible undercurrent surged between heaven and earth. Whoosh! Not long after, a rain of light flowed at the exit of the void tunnel, and a figure rushed out. This was a gray-robed young man with fair skin and an extraordinary bearing. His body surged with the aura of a peak quasi-emperor. However, the instant he appeared, his body stiffened and his scalp went numb. The group of Emperor Realm experts were not far away, their gazes fixed on him. It felt like a rabbit being stared at by a group of lions. Who took the chaos treasure? An anxious voice sounded out. It was the desolate Dao Court's absolute seal martial emperor. He was like a ruler that sat high above the 9 heavens, and his might was terrifying. This was the question that all great emperors were most concerned about. For a moment, the gray-robed young man who walked out of the ancient immortal forbidden zone felt unprecedented pressure, and he was about to suffocate and collapse. He did not even dare to hide it and answered subconsciously, "Lin Sun." Lin Sun? Taishu Hong and the other emperors were stunned. As far as they knew, there was no one called Lin Sun among the 108 powerhouses that entered the ancient immortal forbidden zone this time. This Lin Sun you're talking about, could he be the young man who caused a ruckus in the Kunlun ruins back then? An Emperor Realm cultivator suddenly spoke, causing the other Emperor Realm cultivators' eyelids to twitch. They recalled the major event that shook the entire starry ancient path more than 10 years ago. The young man who obtained the Emperor Realm and Ancestor Realm was called Lin Sun. All of a sudden, the gazes of the emperors at the gray-robed young man became even more terrifying, causing the latter's soul to palpitate and his state of mind to almost collapse. "That's him." The gray-robed young man revealed the truth without hiding anything. This guy's identity as Jean D was only exposed in the ancient, immortal, forbidden zone. Jean D. It's him. The hearts of Tai Shu Hong, the Fire Spirit Empress, and the other Emperor Realm cultivators shook, and their expressions changed. Some were enlightened, some were excited, and some were surprised. This news was too unexpected. The reason was that although they had already guessed the origin of Jean D, they didn't expect that Jean D would coincide with Lin Sun. The ancient, immortal, forbidden zone is so terrifying, and there are so many powerhouses participating. How did this kid obtain that chaos treasure? Some great figures frowned. Many Emperor Realm cultivators were puzzled as well. Doesn't this mean that not only did this kid obtain that chaos treasure, but he also possesses the fortune of becoming an Emperor Realm and Ancestor Realm? When the Fire Spirit Empress said this, everyone's eyes narrowed, and their expressions changed. Just a chaos treasure was enough to make all the forces in the world go crazy, let alone a fortune of becoming an Emperor Realm and Ancestor Realm? The most unbelievable thing was that both the Chaos Treasure and the supreme fortune of becoming an Emperor Realm and Ancestor Realm were in the hands of a single person. For a moment, everyone had their own thoughts. Whoosh! In the void tunnel, another figure flashed out. It was a man in purple. When he saw the Fire Spirit Empress, he immediately showed a sad expression and shouted, "Ancestor Fire Spirit, please avenge my brothers who were killed." Yuzhong, who killed Huangfu Xiaonong and the others? The Fire Spirit Empress asked directly with a murderous look. This doubt had been in her heart for a long time, and it had tormented her during this period of time. The man in purple called Yuzhong gnashed his teeth and said with hatred, "It's Lin Sun." There was an uproar. It was Lin Sun again. There were as many as 19 descendants of Qiankuan Taoist court who entered the ancient immortal forbidden zone, but only 2 were left. Who would have thought that all this was done by just one person? The Jian martial emperor of primitive Taoist court seemed to realize something, and his face changed slightly. Could it be that Kong Zhao and the others of primitive Taoist court were also? Yuzhong took a deep breath and said, "Senior, Kong Zhao and the others were also killed by Lin Sun." What? The emperors present couldn't help but be shocked. Their eyes flashed, and they almost couldn't believe their ears. Because in their previous speculations, Huangfu Xiaonong's group and Kong Zhao's group must have died because they encountered something terrible. But they never thought that it would be done by one person. "Who killed Wen Yu of my clan?" Another great emperor spoke. "Lin Sun," Yuzhong said without hesitation. "Who killed Feng Bailing of my clan?" "Lin Sun." "I sent Lin Sun." One after another, the great emperors asked about their inheritors, and the answers they received were almost the same. Lin Sun. This caused the atmosphere to become oppressive. All of the great emperors had gloomy expressions on their faces and looked very unsightly. A survivor of Mount Fangtsuan had killed so many of their descendants, and blood flowed like a river. How could they not be angry? The old monsters who were secretly watching all this were also shocked. This survivor of Mount Fangtsuan was really ruthless. A magnificent rain of light flowed through the void tunnel as experts walked out one after another. Each of them felt relieved when they arrived in this familiar place, but they were shocked when they saw the gloomy expressions of the emperors. Let me ask you, what did Lin Sun do in the ancient immortal forbidden zone? Who can tell me what Lin Sun did in front of the ruin gate? Was Huangfu Xiaonong really killed by this kid? For a moment, many emperor realms didn't believe it and kept asking, but the answers they got were shockingly similar. Whether it was the deaths of Huangfu Xiaonong, Kong Zhao, or Wen Yu's group, it was all the work of the same person, Lin Sun. The emperors finally couldn't control their anger when they learned the whole story, and their expressions darkened to the extreme. "That damned brat! I swear I won't rest until he's dead." The experts who walked out of the ancient immortal forbidden zone found it hard to breathe, and their bodies stiffened as they watched the emperors get angry. How could it be normal for an emperor to get angry? Even you aren't a match for him? Panwu Imperial Court's Cloudy Rock Emperor looked at Mi Wuya, who walked out of the void tunnel, with a complicated expression. Mi Wuya's expression was calm as he nodded. He didn't explain anything. He was well aware of the grudge between Panwu Imperial Court and Minuscule Mountain, but it didn't affect his attitude of regarding Lin Sun as a fellow cultivator. Emperor Cloudy Rock sighed and said, "Forget it. In any case, this kid will die today." "Will die?" Mi Wuya murmured inwardly. His heart inexplicably became heavy as he looked at the emperor's present. "Hongzhuang, come here." Taishu Hong waved his hand, calling Ling Hongzhuang, Yen Yuro, and the other successors of the Yellow Celestial Court to his side. He transmitted his voice to them. "Chaos will erupt here later. Stay by my side. When everyone is here, we'll leave this place." "Sect Master, Lin Sun isn't an evil person," Wai Ling Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. Taishu Hong cut her off with a wave of his hand. "The inside story involves the battle of orthodoxies. Lin Sun is just a small chess piece that has been drawn into it." Ling Hongzhuang sighed inwardly. Although they were competitors, she admired Lin Sun's courage and strength. Under normal circumstances, she would definitely help him out. But now, even the sect master of the Yellow Celestial Court was unwilling to get involved. One could imagine how terrifying the upcoming storm would be. In fact, as time passed and experts walked out of the void tunnel one after another, the atmosphere around Cloud Mountain became more and more oppressive. Out in the open and in the dark, an unknown number of terrifying willpower blanketed this place, firmly locking onto the void tunnel. They waited quietly. Chapter 2108. The sky was dark. The atmosphere within 10,000 miles of Yunji Mountain was oppressive and tense. Mi Wuya, Ling Hongzhuang and other strong people had now stepped into the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm, but they also felt a lingering depression at this time. They all knew what those old monsters in the Emperor realm were waiting for. "It's that monk." When Ling Kezi's figure walked out of the void tunnel, he was immediately recognized. He helped Lin Sun count the spoils, so he can be called an accomplice. His words made many people in the Emperor realm look at him with unkind eyes. "Little monk, hand over the things," Juyin Emperor shouted, his voice like thunder. Ling Kezi was docile, simple and timid. He was so scared that he shivered and said, "Those things. I gave them to Lin Sun. If you don't believe me, you can search me." "So, you are really Lin Sun's accomplice?" Fire Spirit Empress's eyes flashed like lightning. "Accomplice?" Ling Kezi looked confused. "I am not related to him. Why am I an accomplice?" "Little monk, don't play dumb in front of us," Fire Spirit Empress scolded. "If you are not an accomplice, why did you help that bastard to collect the spoils?" Ling Kezi looked aggrieved. "I was forced." All the emperors were speechless for a while. This little monk was too timid. "I don't care whether you were forced or not. Stay here first. When I catch that bastard, I will deal with you," Fire Spirit Empress said impatiently. "No, I have to leave later." Ling Kezi shook his head and said. In the void tunnel behind him, Jintian Xianyue, Xie Yuhua, and Ling Xiujiao walked out one after another. "These three people are the same as the little monk, Lin Sun's accomplices," someone whispered. Fire Spirit Empress said coldly, "Then let's capture these accomplices first." She stretched out her right hand and grasped in the air. Boom! A huge flaming hand condensed and shrouded Ling Kezi, Jintian Xianyue, and others. The terrifying power of the Emperor realm made the world wail. Ling Kezi was so scared that his face turned green, and he shouted, "I'm going to die! I'm going to die! Master! Master! Come quickly!" The faces of Jintian, Xianyue, and the others changed. Even though they had already reached the peak of Quasi-Emperor, when they faced this palm strike, They still felt great fear in their hearts, and their bodies were restrained by the horrifying might. This was the true power of the Emperor realm. It could look down on the starry sky and intimidate the heavens. When Ling Keisai and the others were about to suffer calamity, a helpless voice suddenly resounded. "I told you not to cause trouble, yet you just wouldn't listen. Why bother?" When this voice rang out, the huge flaming hand that blotted out the sky suddenly stopped in midair, as if it had been obstructed by an invisible force. Then, a monk with a round belly and sloppy clothes appeared out of thin air, holding a tattered palm leaf fan. He had a fat head and big ears, and there was a layer of grease on his face. If not for the string of black prayer beads around his neck, people would have suspected that he was a butcher. When this sloppy fat monk appeared, the giant flaming hand that had been stagnating suddenly exploded, turning into a rain of light that filled the sky. The eyes of the monarchs narrowed. "Senior Chan Tu?" Taishu Hong cried out in surprise as he recognized the other party's origin. Chan Tu, a terrifying figure that was capable of being on par with the dark yellow Dao court's imperial ancestor Qing Yi, had already attained the Dao and become an emperor during the primeval times. Up until the primeval times, he was already respectfully addressed as Imperial Ancestor Chan Tu. For a time, the eyes of the monarchs flickered. Obviously, they knew that this dirty and sloppy fat monk was actually an extremely terrifying existence. "Fellow Taoist wants to get involved as well?" the Fire Spirit Empress said coldly. "Whoever gets involved in this kind of thing will be unlucky. I've come here to take away this stupid disciple of mine. Can everyone do me a favor?" The greasy and fat monk said with a smile, and the fat on his face rolled like waves. The eyes of the monarchs flickered. "You really don't intend to get involved?" the Fire Spirit Empress pondered. Even the Qianquan Dao court's sect master would have to be courteous to an emperor ancestor-level existence. Moreover, Ling Keisai was merely an accomplice. At this moment, if they offended an imperial ancestor realm existence because of such an insignificant person, then it was bound to do more harm than good. "When have you ever disregarded my words?" The fat monk stroked his round belly and smiled kindly and benevolently. The Fire Spirit Empress stopping him. "Go, go, go. Don't be an eyesore here. We, master and disciple, don't have our lives to get involved in this game. We can only leave first." The monk urged quickly. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, it would be hard to believe that this was a terrifying imperial ancestor realm existence. "Master, and them too." Ling Keisai pointed at Jintian Xianyue, Xieyuhua, and Ling Xiujia. The monk instantly felt a headache. He stretched out his thick finger and poked Ling Keisai's bald head, scolding, "You only know how to cause trouble for me." As he spoke, he looked around. "Fellow Taoists, do you have any objections?" "No, these three are the accomplices of the Fangtsuan Mountain. They must stay," the desolate Dao court's Juyin martial emperor said without hesitation. His murderous aura was surging, and his attitude was firm. The monk revealed a stunned expression, and the fat on his face jiggled, as though he didn't hear it clearly. "Why don't you say it again?" Not far away, Taishu Hong's heart skipped a beat and he cursed internally. The monk seemed to be kind and harmless, but when he went berserk, the entire universe would tremble. Chan Tu, the slaughter of the Tao of Zen. His Dharma name alone was enough for one to sense an unusual meaning. The Juyin martial emperor felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness and pressure when he looked at the stunned monk, who had no aura to speak of. How could he not know Chan Tu's identity? However, since he dared to say that, he naturally had his reasons. However, just as the Juyin martial emperor was about to say something, an old voice sounded. "It's better to offend the king of hell than Chan Tuesday Juyin. There's no need to say anything else. Ask Chan Tu and the others to leave." The voice was faint, but it had a mysterious power that could reach one's heart. The Juyin martial emperor's expression changed. Eventually, he nodded and remained silent. Chan Tu patted his round belly and said emotionally, "Looks like it'll be difficult to see some old bones after today." He flipped his sleeves and instantly enveloped Ling Kezi, Jin Tian, Xian Yue, and the others. "Everyone, take care. In the future, I might have a sudden impulse to clean up your corpses and burn incense and paper to pay my respects." Chan Tu grinned and strode away. However, the words he left behind caused everyone present to frown. This imperial ancestor Chan Tu's mouth is simply too vicious. Is he cursing us? Imperial ancestor Chan Tu's words seemed to have some hidden meaning. Only Taishu Hong pondered and sensed something different. However, no matter what, the departure of imperial ancestor Chan Tu made many martial emperors secretly heave a sigh of relief. Buzz. Right at this moment, another figure flashed out from the void tunnel. He wore linen clothes and exuded an indolent aura. It was Xian Juyin. When he sensed the auras of numerous martial emperors enveloping this area, he couldn't help but laugh with ridicule. "I, Xian Juyin, am just a junior. What ability do I have to make all the seniors welcome me together? I'm truly overwhelmed by the favor, and I'm terrified." As he spoke, he even cupped his fists towards the surroundings casually, and it was obvious that he was being perfunctory. At this moment, the originally tense and murderous atmosphere in the surroundings had become strange. "This little fellow surnamed Xian, isn't he too good at courting death?" Chapter 2109. "How dare you!" the Fire Spirit Empress shouted. "Don't think that these people here will be tolerant of you because your surname is Xian. If you dare to be rude again, believe it or not, I will help your elders to teach you a lesson." Xian Juyin gave a lazy and said weakly, "Forget it, I won't be making trouble with you old seniors here." As he said, he was about to leave as if there was no one else here. "Stop!" The Fire Spirit Empress's eyes were full of coldness. "I heard that you and Lin Sun are very close, right?" Xian Juyin rolled his eyes and said angrily, "Isn't that nonsense? Otherwise, why would I help him collect the spoils in front of the Gate of Ruins?" This kind of frivolous attitude was extremely rude, and the words "spoils" in his mouth irritated many emperors, and their faces darkened. They looked at Xian Juyin unkindly. The Fire Spirit Empress was so angry that she laughed. "Young man, so your Xian family is going to collude with Fong Siyuan Mountain?" This sentence was extremely vicious. If Xian Juyin agreed, it would definitely cause a great misunderstanding, and even affect the Xian family behind him. Xian Juyin narrowed his eyes and said, "What do you mean collude? Can I understand that you are maliciously slandering my Xian family? It seems that the Heaven and Earth Taoism court has a lot of opinions about my Xian family." What a powerful young man! Many emperors' eyes became strange. The Fire Spirit Empress was also stunned and said coldly, "You have a sharp tongue. You are just a junior. Who gave you the courage to talk to me like this? Even if your Xian family is here, you can't be so presumptuous." Xian Juyin laughed unscrupulously. At the same time, a laughter sounded between heaven and earth, like the raging wind and thunder, shaking heaven and earth, and making everything tremble. That laughter was also unscrupulous, and it didn't care how many terrifying figures there were in this place. It was extremely presumptuous. Accompanied by the laughter, a vigorous and heroic voice rang out, "Who gave him the courage? I gave him the courage." With a single sentence, a golden sound wave condensed, and in the end, it turned into a row of dazzling golden ancient Tao text. Every word was the size of a millstone and flowed with terrifying power of laws. They were resplendent and dazzling as they floated above the Fire Spirit Empress' head like a row of flickering suns. The monarchs were stunned. What followed was a series of gasps. This was a direct slap to the face, and it was extremely domineering and ferocious. These words condensed into dazzling markings of the Tao, and it seemed as if he was deeply afraid that others didn't know how arrogant these words of his were. Everyone couldn't help but think of a person, the current patriarch of the Xian family, Xian Shangchen. Since the primordial era, He was a leading figure in the way of the sword who was known for his wild temperament. He was a mad disciple of the way of the emperor who was as arrogant as the sun. A line of golden words appeared in the sky with a flowing glow. Even the authorities that were watching the scene in the dark were astounded. This Xian Shangchen, how tyrannical! The fire spirit empress was speechless at this moment. Her body was tense, her pupils constricted, and her pretty face was filled with solemnity and fear. That line of Tao text was undoubtedly the most blatant humiliation to her, and it was the greatest trampling on her dignity. One should know that the area around Cloud Mountain had long become the area that all the people in the world were paying attention to. Any slight movement here could very likely spread throughout the world in the shortest amount of time. One could imagine how great of a commotion it would cause if this scene was spread. However, the Fire Spirit Empress didn't dare to act recklessly. The line of Tao text that floated in the sky was like a terrifying deterrent. It was filled with power, and it was like a Tao sword that was pressed against the Fire Spirit Empress' throat. If she acted recklessly, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Senior, my father is here. Do you think he's being presumptuous?" Xian Juyin said with a grin. The monarchs all had different expressions, and their hearts were in turmoil. It wasn't just presumptuous, it couldn't be more presumptuous. Looking at the motionless Fire Spirit Empress in the distance, some people couldn't help but feel pity for her. Before the operation of the ancient celestial forbidden area, the Fire Spirit Empress was slapped in the face by the woman from the Gui Yuan Dao court. And now, her dignity was being trampled on by the Xian family's patriarch, who didn't even appear an empress of the heaven and earth Dao court. How high and mighty was her status, yet she was repeatedly humiliated. If this were to spread, she would definitely become the laughingstock of the world. How could this not make people pity and sigh? "Brother Xian, that's enough." A cold voice resounded, and it was like a gust of cold wind that dispersed the line of golden Tao text that floated in the sky. "Since you're pleading for her, I'll let her go." Xian Shangchen's powerful and heroic voice resounded again. "Brat, you're not as capable as your father, yet you like to cause trouble. Do you want me to wipe your ass for the rest of my life?" "Who asked me to be surnamed Xian? Who asked you to be my father? I want to refuse. Can I?" Not only was Xian Juyin not afraid, he even puckered his lips helplessly. Xian Shangchen still didn't show himself. He roared with laughter. "You didn't learn my abilities, but you've learned my temper. Not bad, I've improved during this trip." Swoosh. In the next moment, a ray of golden light flashed and enveloped Xian Juyin's figure. He instantly vanished on the spot. From the beginning until the end, none of the emperors present stopped him. "Brother Xian, we've already given face to your Xian family. Please conduct yourself with dignity." The cold voice resounded once more. Ha! Only Xian Shangchen's heroic laughter resounded through the heavens and the earth before it gradually vanished. At this moment, the Fire Spirit Empress finally relaxed as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. However, her expression was extremely gloomy and unsightly. Her dignity had been trampled on repeatedly, causing her to lose all her face. She was filled with rage, yet she had nowhere to vent it. She was in a terrible state. From the moment Ling Kezi and the others were taken away to the moment Xian Juyin was taken away by his father, all of this was witnessed by many. Even though none of the emperors said anything, the atmosphere grew even more oppressive, because everyone realized that on the surface, the Fire Spirit Empress, the Juyin Martial Emperor, and the others were in charge of everything near Cloud Mountain. But in reality, it was those seniors that were hiding in the shadows and hadn't shown themselves that were the most terrifying. For example, when the great Emperor Chan Tu appeared, the one who stopped the Juyin Martial Emperor was an emperor ancestor from the antiquity Dao court. The one who stopped the Xian family's patriarch, Xian Shangchen, was a terrifying figure from the universe Dao court. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that compared to the old antiques hiding in the dark, the emperors present were slightly inferior. It was precisely because of this that the situation became more and more oppressive and tense. "Let's go." Taishu Hong sighed softly. He decided to retreat before the storm arrived. Otherwise, it would be too late to leave. With a wave of his sleeve, he teleported away with Ling Hongzhuang and the others, who were slightly unwilling to give up. No one stopped him. On the contrary, Taishu Hong's departure made some of the emperors feel more relaxed. This at least proved that the Heaven Yellow Dao court had no intention of getting involved in this storm. Right when Taishu Hong's group had just left, a tall figure walked out from within the spatial passageway along with a gust of flowing light. He wore a moon-white robe, had long hair like ink, and was handsome and elegant. The aura around him was as calm as water, like a transcendent immortal. It was Lin Sun. When they saw him appear, the world seemed to be still, and the air seemed to be frozen. All the emperors' gazes locked onto him, and an indescribably terrifying and murderous aura spread out. This young man had once used the identity of Jin Di. Like a dark horse, he rose up in the cloud continent and showed off his brilliance. He had once dominated the Xianwang mystic realm and suppressed all the heroes. He was once regarded as the successor of the origin returning Dao court, causing a great commotion. His identity had also been seen through, and he was treated as bait. They set up a huge trap just to lure out the wandering souls behind him. However, no one had expected that this person, who was like a pawn in the eyes of these great figures, would actually be called Lin Sun. He had once caused a ruckus in the Kunlun ruins, killed until rivers of blood flowed, and controlled a supreme fortune to become an emperor or ancestor. Moreover, no one had imagined that such a figure that was like bait would actually slaughter his way through the ancient immortal restricted area and cause rivers of blood to flow. He was invincible amongst those at the same cultivation realm, and even that chaotic treasure had been seized by him. When they thought of the numerous bloody events that had happened to this young man, some of the emperors were unable to calm down. A single person was able to fight everywhere and suppress all enemies at the same cultivation realm. How terrifying was that! Moreover, he controlled a chaos treasure and possessed the fortune to become an emperor or ancestor. If he were to step foot into the emperor stage in the future, who in the entire starry sky could suppress him? Just thinking about it made one shudder. The atmosphere was oppressive and silent. All the emperors had their own thoughts, but none of them chose to make a move. They seemed to be waiting for something, but also seemed to be afraid and on guard against something. In other words, in their hearts, killing Lin Sun was nothing. What they really cared about was the person behind Lin Sun. Lin Sun looked calm. Behind him, the void tunnel leading to the ancient immortal forbidden area was collapsing and disappearing. He was alone at this moment, but he was like a lamb surrounded by a pack of wolves. But he didn't show any panic, or it could be said that he had already prepared for the worst and expected such a scene to happen. It was also because of this that in the ancient immortal forbidden area, he entrusted Jintian Xianyue, Xieyuhua, and Leng Xiujia to Ling Kezi to take away. That was why he refused Xianzhuin's help and let him leave in advance. He did this because he didn't want to implicate Ling Kezi, Xianzhuin, and the others. As for himself, he was ready to welcome the storm. The atmosphere was deathly silent. Lin Sun stood alone and glanced at the emperors present one by one, looking at the undisguised indifference and coldness on their faces. Suddenly, a strong impulse inexplicably surged in his heart. If I become an emperor one day, I will make all the emperors in the world bow their heads. Chapter 21:10. In a secluded valley far away from Cloud Mountain. When Lin Sun's figure emerged from the void tunnel, the old monk who was playing chess with Emperor Ancestor Divine Void, who looked like a youth and wore a lotus crown on his head, suddenly smiled. From this moment onwards, the game will begin and the variables will be revealed. This game will depend on who will be able to come out on top in the end. Since we are here at the right time, we have not waited bitterly until now." He sighed with emotion, and the wrinkles on his face had a luster as if they had been carved by time. Chan Tu won't really leave, and Xian Shangchen is also a restless character. They should be two variables, but if they want to take advantage of the situation, I'm afraid it's impossible. Emperor Ancestor Divine Void picked up a chess piece and said casually, "As for me, I don't care what variables there are, and I don't care about Fangtsuan Mountain. As long as I take the treasure of chaos, this trip will be a success." As he spoke, he was about to place a chess piece, but his hand froze in midair. Almost at the same time, the old monk raised his eyebrows and said, "It seems, the variables have come ahead of time. Since it is a game of chess, if you want to break the game, you have to find another way and start from the unexpected." A clear and bright laughter rang out. Then, a thin figure came from afar. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and his bearing was elegant. In particular, his eyes were as bright as stars, without any impurities. As he took a step forward, it was as if the stars in the world were moving, and everything was changing. Everything was collapsing like bubbles. Finally, it turned into a deep black void. There was no sky, no earth, only nothingness. Or it could be said that the mountain valley and the world before were all illusions. The real scene was that the old monk and the black-clothed youth were sitting in this black nothingness, playing chess. But at this time, the thin figure broke through the illusion and walked in. This was tantamount to intruding into the other's world. Li Xianwei of Fangtsuan Mountain? The young-looking Emperor Ancestor Divine Void frowned. Except for this green lotus that was planted in the chaos by the master of Fangtsuan Mountain, who else in this world can so easily break into our Emperor enchantment? The old monk Emperor Ancestor Nirvana sighed. Am I right, Sword Emperor Green Firmament? No, or should I call you Sword Ancestor Green Firmament? It was Li Xianwei. He smiled and said, "It's just a title, it's not important. What's important is that I came uninvited this time. I just want to play a game of chess with you two." 10,000 feet away, Li Xian stopped. His figure was tall and slender as he smiled. "Whoever loses will leave his life behind. How about it? What a huge variable!" The Nirvana Void Emperor Ancestor sighed. Emperor Ancestor Divine Void stood up. His cold eyes were like lightning as they locked onto Li Xianwei. "I've long since heard that your Blue Lotus Paradise world art is profound and profound. I just don't know if it's true or false." A formless and terrifying aura spread out from his body. Li Xian said with a smile, "We'll know once we give it a try. Monk, what do you think?" Emperor Ancestor Niekong, who was sitting cross-legged before the chessboard, slowly stood up. His turbid eyes became bright and clear, and his hunched figure became ramrod straight. Even the wrinkles on his face disappeared, turning into skin that was as smooth as a baby's. He put his palms together and said solemnly, "Then I'll have to offend you." Boom! The vast black world of nothingness was filled with endless deep Sanskrit sounds and Buddha's light, which made Emperor Ancestor Nie Kong look like a supreme god. Li Xian stretched himself as if he was cheering up. He said with a smile, "Come on, the earlier you die, the earlier you reincarnate." The atmosphere in Cloud Mountain was dead silent. Seeing that Lin Sun was calm and unruffled without showing any fear, many emperors were a little surprised. "It seems that you know what's going to happen?" Jian Martial Emperor of Primitive Taoism Court sneered. "Then I might as well tell you that even if those ghosts come, they can't save you. Lonely and wild ghosts." Hearing these words, Lin Sun completely concluded one thing. This action of fighting for the Chaos Treasure was not as simple as it seemed. And he might have become a bait, and the purpose was to draw out those senior brothers and sisters in Mountain of Heart and Soul. "Old guy, I'm afraid you'll be the first one to suffer." Lin Sun looked as calm as before. Jian Martial Emperor sneered, and seemed to be too lazy to compete with Lin Sun with words. He said directly, "Hand over the Chaos Treasure and the Supreme Fortune, and I'll let you die quickly." His voice was like thunder, full of oppression. The horrible pressure of the Emperor realm swept out like a landslide and a tsunami, disturbing the world. The action of Juyin Martial Emperor was like a fuse. The aura that originally covered this area and locked the willpower on Lin Sun all became alert. It seemed that they were afraid that Lin Sun would be killed by Juyin Martial Emperor first. The remnants of Mountain of Heart and Soul haven't appeared yet, but you can't hold back? Don't you know that the current situation will affect the whole situation? An indifferent voice sounded, reprimanding the movement caused by Juyin Martial Emperor. If you really want to fight, this evil beast should be dealt with by Heaven and Earth Taoism Court. Those descendants of Heaven and Earth Taoism Court can't die in vain. Another solemn voice resounded. You want to fight now? Well, I won't be polite. In a word, the chaos treasure on this boy belongs to Primitive Taoism Court. It belongs to you, old guy. I haven't seen you for so many years, but you are still so arrogant. Voices sounded one after another, full of a sense of hostility, which changed the weather of this world. Lin Sun looked at this scene coldly, and an inexplicable emotion arose in his heart. How presumptuous these old guys were! Did they take him as prey to fight for? Boom! The void was broken, and someone directly took action. A giant hand covered the sky and grabbed towards Lin Sun. However, it was obstructed by a few other large hands that reached out halfway, producing a world-shaking collision. Dao sounds rumbled through the air. Come here. In the smoke and dust, suddenly, a gray whip shadow appeared above Lin Sun's head and shrouded him at an incredible speed. Invisible whip. A surprised voice sounded, but it was too late to stop this scene. Open. Lin Sun didn't move, but a wisp of needle-like sword chi swept up from his hair and gently cut in the void. Without a sound, the hazy gray whip shadow was cut into two halves, and then it dispersed and disappeared. And that wisp of sword chi turned into a 3-inch man, which was the sword spirit Leaf. Leaf's figure was extremely small, but in the eyes of the emperors, it was like seeing a big sun shining alone in the sky, dazzling. Sword spirit. The originally chaotic situation suddenly quieted down, and many big shots narrowed their eyes, seeming to be very surprised. Only a life emperor artifact could give birth to a true artifact spirit. It was extremely rare and precious. Even martial emperors rarely had such a artifact spirit. It seems that this boy has a lot of good things in his hands. A cold voice rang out. Many emperors were ready to take action. In the dark, there was an unknown amount of terrifying willpower that was accumulating power and waiting for an opportunity. I'm even more surprised that at this time, the ghosts of Fangtsuan Mountain haven't appeared yet, someone whispered, which made many people's hearts tremble. From the moment Lin Sun appeared, this game had already begun. The reason why they didn't immediately kill Lin Sun was that they were worried that killing the bait would scare away the descendants of Fangtsuan Mountain. But the situation had developed to this point, and Lin Sun's situation was even more dangerous, but the descendants of Fangtsuan Mountain still hadn't appeared, which made them all vigilant. But there were also some people who had nothing to fear. For example, Juyin Martial Emperor waved his hand without hesitation, and a gray whip shadow appeared above Lin Sun's head again and shrouded him. Obviously, the owner of the Void Concealment Whip was the Absolute Seal Martial Emperor. The sword spirit Leaf looked very cold. He raised his hand and gently swept, and the sword chi cut down the whip. "Ha, let me do it. This sword spirit is extraordinary and can be refined into the soul of the demon weapon. I can't let you spoil it." A loud laugh sounded, and a mountain of white bones appeared in the void. Burning Sky Demon Emperor stood proudly on it and pressed his palm toward Lin Sun. "You want this sword spirit, and I want this boy's life." Fire Spirit Empress also took action. She released a fire dragon cover, which spewed out hundreds of millions of fire rain, and turned into a chaotic torrent of fire rushing toward Lin Sun, burning the sky and destroying the earth. That depends on whether everyone here agrees or not. Exactly. In that instant, several large hands covered the sky and the sun, and there were even some secret treasures flying through the air, their killing power shocking the heavens. Also at this moment, an incomparably majestic figure appeared in front of Lin Sun, with infinite thunder and lightning around him, like an ancient thunder god coming to the world. Boom! He raised his fist and punched with endless thunder law. He roared, cracked the void, and the thunder shook the sky. In the blink of an eye, the resistance against the attacks from all directions vanished into thin air. The rain of light made the figure more extraordinary, like the incarnation of Thunder Tao, domineering and boundless. Thunder Emperor of Silence. You're not dead? A surprised old voice sounded in this world. All the emperors in the field were taken aback. Fire Spirit Empress, Juyin Martial Emperor, and others changed their faces suddenly. Thunder Emperor of Silence, Ji Xian, a legendary figure in the 9th level of Emperor Realm, a legend in Thunder Tao that no one could compete with. In the face of such an existence, Fire Spirit Empress and other emperors present were no different from juniors. Rumor has it that this person died in the ancient immortal forbidden area in ancient times, didn't he? Many people couldn't calm down. Lin Sun was just an insignificant junior, but he not only had a sword spirit, but also had the protection of Thunder Emperor of Silence, which was completely beyond everyone's expectation. Who would have thought that such a twist would occur just to deal with a minor character? The successors of Minuscule Mountain hadn't even appeared yet. After so many years, there are still people who recognize me. Ji Xian's figure was bright, bathed in the blazing and violent law of Thunder Tao, and he said coldly, "But I didn't expect that people like you would attack a young man together. Don't you think it's too shameless?" His voice was full of undisguised contempt and contempt. Chapter 21:11. Ji Xian's words swept across the area like a hurricane. Some martial monarchs narrowed their eyes. They had guessed that something would happen today, but they didn't expect that Lin Sun would be the first to show up. Don't be afraid, everyone. Thunderclap Emperor of Silence is a legendary figure at the 9th level of the martial monarch realm, but he's only left with the power of his spirit. A slow and unhurried voice resounded through the heavens and the earth, and it was the voice of one of the seniors that was hiding in the shadows. In fact, before and after Lin Sun walked out of the void tunnel, there had been many old antiques in the dark. These people were even more frightening than the Fire Spirit Empress and the Juyin Martial Emperor. The reason why they hadn't revealed themselves yet was simple: they had to be on guard against any unexpected changes. So it's only the power of his spirit. The Fire Spirit Empress and the others were relieved. A 9th-level martial monarch was enough to make them feel desperate. But if it was only the power of his spirit, there wasn't much of a threat left. Ji Xian noticed the change in the atmosphere as well, and he couldn't help but smile as he said with a composed tone, "Exactly, I do indeed only have a strand of my soul core left. However, all of you can guess, if I were to fight desperately, how many would I be able to drag down with me?" Many people were shocked. The slow voice sounded again. "Unfortunately, even if you fight to the death, you can't change the situation." When Tianlan of the Demon Court? Ji Xian frowned and his eyes glowed with a frightening light. After a moment of silence, the slow voice suddenly laughed. "It seems that Brother Ji Xian has a good memory. When Tianlan was a 9th-level martial monarch in the Demon Court. He was a great figure who had become a martial monarch and was known as Emperor Ancestor." "How can I forget a loser?" Ji Xian sneered. Many people gasped. It turned out that Emperor Ancestor had been defeated by the Thunderclap Emperor of Silence a long time ago. This was a big secret that no one knew before. "Humph." When Tianlan snorted, "Unfortunately, you're not qualified for me to kill you now. You'd better think about how to get through this." From the beginning to the end, he didn't even show himself. Martial Uncle Tianlan is right. He's only a strand of his spirit, so there's nothing to worry about. It's wishful thinking if he wants to save that little animal. The Burning Sky Demon Emperor, who was also from the demon court, spoke coldly, encouraging everyone to attack together and kill Ji Xian first. Ji Xian remained silent. The sword spirit leaf buzzed and shone. Lin Sun looked calm. Even if those senior brothers and sisters of Fangtsuan Mountain didn't come, he still had a trump card in his hand. At this moment, something strange happened again. A golden palace that seemed to be forged from divine iron suddenly descended from the sky, and the pressure it exerted caused the void to wail and collapse. Its aura surged violently, and it shone with boundless brilliance. Finally, it hit the ground not far from Lin Sun with a bang, shaking the earth and filling the air with smoke and dust. Great Tao Nine Heavens Palace! The monarchs frowned and guessed who it was. The golden palace continued to shrink. In the end, it was only a foot tall. Then, it floated into the hand of a figure that had appeared out of thin air. That figure was mighty and emanated a fierce and unrestrained aura that shot into the sky. As he stood there casually, the laws of the Grand Tao floated up into appearance like a tide around him. Extreme Demon Sword Emperor Xia Xinglie. At this moment, Lin Sun also recognized the identity of the newcomer. He was surprised. He didn't expect that Xia Xiaocheng's father would be involved in this. Xia Xinglie revealed a wanton smile and said, "The power of Ji Xian's spirit is not enough. What if I join in?" "Xia Xinglie, didn't you leave? Why are you still involved?" Someone couldn't help but ask. Xia Xinglie had been here long before the operation of the ancient immortal forbidden area began. However, he suddenly left halfway, which made everyone think that he had sensed that the situation was not good, so he withdrew in advance. No one expected that he would come back at this time, and that he would support Lin Sun. Xia Xinglie sighed, "I have no choice. I only have one daughter, but she can't bear to see this guy in trouble. As for me, I owe my daughter too much. I can't bear to see my daughter being wronged, so I risked my life to come here and play with you." Everyone was speechless. For this reason, he would even give up his life? Was the ultimate demon sword emperor crazy? Even Lin Sun was surprised. He was sure that an unparalleled figure like Xia Xinglie could see how terrifying and dangerous this game was. But he had come. Whether or not it had anything to do with Xia Xiaocheng, Lin Sun was very touched. It was a great favor. It's not easy to seek death. Coincidentally, I'm quite interested in your great Tao Palace. This time, I'll leave your life behind as well. How about it? The old voice that had stopped the Xian family's leader, Xian Shangchen, sounded. Then, a fiery red figure appeared. It was a man in a fiery red Taoist robe. His skin was as white as jade, and his face was extremely handsome. His eyes reflected terrifying flames. Looking closely, the laws of fire circled around him like fire dragons. He was like a god born from divine flames, Emperor Qi Hong, an ancient existence of the heaven and earth Taoist court. He had an illustrious reputation that could make all living beings tremble. The legends about him could be traced back to the primordial era. The atmosphere instantly became extremely oppressive. Emperor Qi Hong was the first terrifying figure to come out from the dark. Although he looked young and handsome, he had lived for tens of thousands of years. He was an absolute ancient. Xia Xinglie's expression was solemn. He took a deep breath and suddenly smiled. "You and I are one realm apart. However, I only need one last step to break through. I can borrow your strength to be a whetstone." As he spoke, his entire body exuded a world-shocking battle intent, and there were indistinct sword cries surging out from his body. The extreme demon sword emperor had never been afraid of anyone when he traveled the heavens. "A whetstone? Aren't you afraid of breaking a stubborn iron like you?" Emperor Qi Hong looked young, but he was incomparably old. He had a terrifying aura. "What if I help you quench the fire while you're sharpening it?" Thunderous Emperor of Destruction said coldly. "You!" Emperor Qi Hong shook his head and only spat out two words, No. The atmosphere was oppressive. At this moment, Lin Sun felt it difficult to breathe. If it wasn't for the sword spirit leaf and thunderous emperor of destruction helping him neutralize the terrifying emperor's aura, he would have died a long time ago. This made Lin Sun realize that even though he had stepped into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm and was infinitely close to the emperor realm, the gap was still too wide. It was like a chasm. At the very least, he, who was at the first heaven of the quasi-emperor realm, was temporarily unable to cross it. Let's try. Xia Xinglia looked at Ji Xian. Sure. Ji Xian nodded. Emperor Qi Hong frowned. If the two of you make a move, this kid will no longer have anyone to protect him. Are you sure you want to do this? Actually, you're just worried that you'll miss some opportunities if you're held back by the two of us. Xia Xinglia's eyes surged with battle intent. His words poked right into Emperor Qi Hong's heart. The successors of Minuscule Mountain had yet to appear. He had already fallen into a disadvantageous position. If he continued to be held back, he would only fall into a disadvantageous position in the subsequent battles. However, Emperor Qi Hong could not tolerate Xia Xinglia's provocation. He said coldly, "Then I'll fulfill your wish and send you on your way first." Clang! Xia Xinglia took out an ink-like sword and stepped into the air. The sword intent was so strong that it shook the stars. "Come up and fight." Emperor Qi Hong snorted coldly, waved his sleeve and flew up. In a flash, the two fought fiercely in the sky. Only endless flames could be seen surging and the sound of the sword could be heard. If such a battle of the Emperor realm took place on the earth, it would be enough to destroy the mountains and rivers and cause an unimaginable disaster. For a moment, the eyes of countless Emperor realm experts were attracted by this battle. "I'm going." Ji Xian glanced at Lin Sun again. He had agreed to help Xia Xinglia because Lin Sun had said that he still had a trump card in this battle. "Senior, please give it your all." Lin Sun nodded calmly. "Okay." Ji Xian rushed into the sky. His figure swept into the depths of the sky and turned into endless thunder. It seemed that this terrifying battle of the Emperor realm had disrupted the sky and revealed terrifying scenes, as if the end of the world was coming. With Lin Sun's current realm, it was difficult for him to see the fighting scene, but just looking at it made him breathless and breathless. But immediately, he had a feeling of extreme danger. Whoosh! A pure cyan giant palm condensed out of thin air and grasped at him. Obviously, the owner of the giant palm wanted to take advantage of the excellent opportunity when Ji Xian and Xia Xinglia were not here to capture Lin Sun. Sword howls and droning resounded as the sword spirit leaf attacked. Sword qi that was monstrous, ferocious, and boundlessly overbearing. However, when it collided with the enormous green palm, it was actually suppressed to the point of retreating inch by inch, and it faintly showed signs of being unable to hold on any longer. "Evil creature, come here!" The Fire Spirit Empress, who had been paying attention to Lin Sun, laughed and stretched out a white and slender hand to grasp at Lin Sun. "Why do you want to go over when you can solve the problem with one punch?" A dull voice rang out. And what was faster than the voice was a punch. This punch was simple and direct, yet it seemed capable of destroying everything that stood in its way, and it carried an aura of being invincible and courageous. This punch seemed to ask a question on behalf of Lin Sun. Under this punch, the power of the Fire Spirit Empress's grasp burst like a piece of paper, which seemed so vulnerable, and the Fire Spirit Empress herself let out a scream of horror. This punch was extremely overbearing, which made her fighting spirit collapse and her state of mind collapse. Even if she used all her means and everything she had learned, she couldn't resist it even for a moment. Boom! With a dull thunderous sound, the body of the Fire Spirit Empress burst into pieces like being crushed by a millstone, turning into a rain of blood that evaporated and disappeared. With one punch, the dignified Fire Spirit Empress, a figure with high prestige in the Heaven and Earth Taoism court, was killed. The whole audience was shocked. Chapter 21:12. Only emperors knew that it was easy to defeat someone of the same generation, but it was extremely difficult to kill someone of the same generation. The reason was that the cultivation of emperors had already reached an unimaginable level. Even if there was only a remnant soul left, there was still hope for them to recover in the future. But now, the Fire Spirit Empress, who had already stepped into the third stage of Emperor realm, was easily killed by a single punch. This could only mean that the cultivation of the owner of the punch far surpassed the Fire Spirit Empress. Only then would he have the absolute power to crush her. The crowd was shocked by this bloody scene. Many variables had happened since the beginning of this game. Some were unexpected, some were within people's expectations. But no one expected the Fire Spirit Empress to be the first to die. Emperor fall. This was an earth-shattering event on the starry ancient path, enough to cause a huge uproar. Moreover, the Fire Spirit Empress wasn't an ordinary Emperor realm. She had one of the 6 great Tao courts, Heaven and Earth Tao Court, behind her. At the same time, people saw a figure appear in front of Lin Sun. He wore straw sandals and carried a rusty hoe on his shoulder. His skin was dark and his appearance was rough, like that of a farmer. No one saw where he came from, nor did they notice how he got there. It was as if he had been standing there for a long time. Just his standing posture gave people the feeling that he was a pillar that could prop up the sky, majestic and boundless. The 11th successor of Fangtsuan Mountain, Pu Zhen. Someone said. The identity of the person revealed made the hearts of all the emperors tremble. They couldn't help but think of some rumors from a long time ago. In the rumors, there was once a peerless demon lord who was killed by a farmer with a single punch. There was once a peerless celestial sword emperor who was killed by a farmer with a single punch. There was also a Buddhist emperor who had an indestructible body who was killed by a farmer with a single punch. In short, in these rumors, there would be a farmer and his unparalleled, overbearing, and unstoppable punch. Later on, people found out that the farmer came from Fangtsuan Mountain and was ranked 11th. His Taoist name was Pu Zhen. It was also from then on that the world honored him as the true martial emperor. Zhen was taken from his Taoist name. Wu was taken from the power of his punch. The 2 words Zhenwu were called emperor, and they were truly worthy of the name. In this silent atmosphere, a cold voice with a hint of depression sounded in Lin's heart. That person made the first move again. Lin Sun slightly raised the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were strange. The one who spoke was she, who was hibernating in the heaven-accessing secret land. When they were crossing the starry sky on the boat, senior brother Pu Zhen had killed Monk Dukong from the hidden land realm with 3 punches before she could. Before this, she had originally planned to kill the Fire Spirit Empress. However, Pu Zhen had taken the initiative to appear before him. She couldn't help but feel slightly depressed. Senior, there are many variables in today's game. There will definitely be a chance for you to make a move. Lin Sun comforted her. Thinking about it, Lin Sun found it strange. In the past, Lin Sun had never been willing to ask she for help unless it was a matter of life and death. Who would have thought that she would actually take the initiative? This subtle change made Lin Sun very happy in his heart. Pu Zhen said in a dull voice, "Junior brother, it seems that there's nothing for you to do next. Why don't you concentrate on watching the show?" This sentence was also very simple, but it was indescribably harsh to the ears of the emperors present. True martial emperor looked dull and honest, but his words were too arrogant. Lin Sun smiled. This was 11th senior brother. His words were as simple and direct as his fists, but they were invisible and domineering. You don't even know that a big fish has entered the net. Pu Zhen, do you think you can escape from this big net? A low and deep voice rang out. Suddenly, there was a piercing coldness between heaven and earth. Everything was covered with frost, and the void seemed to be frozen. Even the emperors shivered and felt a chill penetrating into their souls. Along with the voice, a figure condensed in the void. This person looked like a young man, wearing a Taoist robe, and his hair was coiled into a bun. When his eyes opened and closed, there was a terrifying vision of the destruction of the void and the collapse of everything. Strands of Emperor Realm laws transformed into the form of wind and lightning that surged and roiled around him, causing him to seem like a supreme overlord that had descended to the world. Panwu Dao Court, Imperial Ancestor Wind, Thunder. An old antique who had participated in the Dao Battle of the Emperors and established a fierce reputation. His wind and thunder method shook the 9 heavens. As soon as he appeared, the Emperors present felt it difficult to breathe. His aura was too powerful. But this was only the beginning. As Imperial Ancestor Wind Thunder appeared, another chuckle sounded. Pujin, could it be that you've forgotten how your 9th senior brother Guyupu, 14th junior brother Jishio, 26th junior brother Wuzong, 37th junior sister Wenlu, 41st junior brother Guqingxiu, and 44th junior brother Xian Yuanzi died in the Dao Battle of the Ancient Emperors? A wisp of silver light covered the ground and turned into an old figure in a silver robe. His beard and hair fluttered in the wind, and his face was ruddy. He looked like an immortal. There was another commotion. Because this old man was Imperial Ancestor Su Wen of the primordial Imperial Su clan. In an instant, 2 Imperial Ancestors appeared and pointed their spears at Pujin, causing the atmosphere to become extremely tense. The Absolute Seal Martial Emperor, Cloudrock Emperor, and the other Imperial Emperors instantly seemed to dim in comparison. A wisp of coldness appeared on Pujin's face. At this moment, this man who seemed like a farmer had actually been infuriated. The reason was that all the names that Imperial Ancestor Su Wen had mentioned were the disciples of Mount Heart that had suffered in the Dao Battle of the Ancient Emperors. Do you know why I've come? Pujin's voice was heavy, yet it carried a strand of ruthlessness as he spoke word by word. To avenge all those years ago. Bang! Shocking killing intent surged out from Pujin, and boundless energy of the Grand Dao surged out from him as his clothes fluttered. At this moment, he finally revealed the supreme bearing of a true martial emperor. Ha! Then let's see if you, Pujin, have the ability to do so. Imperial Ancestor Wind Thunder and Imperial Ancestor Su Wen started laughing. This big fish has already entered the net, yet he's still acting so arrogantly. It's truly laughable. Right at this moment, a furious howl suddenly resounded from the depths of the sky. No! The expressions of everyone here changed. At this moment, Imperial Ancestor Blaze Rainbow, who was in fierce battle with Xia Xinglia and the Lightning Emperor of Nirvana, was enveloped by a strand of sword qi. The sword qi was extremely ethereal and elegant, and it was like the beauty of the heavens and the earth. The hearts of every single Imperial Emperor that witnessed this strike twitched fiercely while their entire bodies felt cold. Pooh! In the blink of an eye, Imperial Ancestor Blazerenbow's figure was obliterated into ash by the sword qi, and his furious howl still reverberated in the depths of the sky. All the Imperial Emperors trembled. The expressions of Imperial Ancestor Wind Thunder and Imperial Ancestor Su Wen changed. An Imperial Ancestor had been killed with a single strike. Who in the entire universe possesses such terrifying attainments in the Sword Dao? Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. He was unable to see through the unparalleled battle in the depths of the sky, nor was he able to sense how profound that strike was. However, he was clearly aware that the might of that strike was absolutely capable of shaking the world and shaking the world. Who was it? At this moment, no matter if it was out in the open or in the shadows, all the divine senses and senses were sweeping through the depths of the sky and paying attention to the battle. Since the battle had begun, Imperial Ancestor Blaze Rainbow had become the first Imperial Ancestor to perish. Even Imperial Emperors were extremely difficult to kill, let alone a figure at the Imperial Emperor realm who'd attained atavism. Even Imperial Emperors were extremely difficult to kill, let alone a figure at the Imperial Emperor realm who'd attained atavism. a graceful and beautiful figure walked down from the sky. She wore clothes that were covered in pink rose patterns while her jet-black hair was held up by a hairpin, and it revealed a peerlessly beautiful appearance that could cause the heavens and the earth to dim in comparison. Her figure was slender while her skin was fair and tender like jade, and her eyes that carried a natural and amorous aura were clear like the stars. At this moment, as she strode down from the sky, the graceful bearing she revealed inadvertently was sufficient to stun the eyes of the ages. The extreme Devil Sword Emperor, Xia Xinglie, and the Lightning Emperor of Nirvana followed closely behind her. Xia Xinglie had a helpless expression. He'd intended to temper himself and attempt to break through in this battle, yet he'd never expected that it would be interrupted by that extremely shocking strike of the sword. On the other hand, the Lightning Emperor of Nirvana had an infatuated expression while his eyes were filled with warmth, pleasant surprise, and excitement. Since that graceful figure that he'd bitterly yearned for countless years had appeared, his soul had left his body. It wasn't until that graceful figure came to the front of the Cloud Mountain that the crowd came back to their senses and revealed different expressions. Some were amazed, some were shocked, and some were deeply afraid. This woman was, of course, Jun Huan. When he saw her, Lin Sun's eyes widened, and an inexplicable thought came to his mind. No wonder the Lightning Emperor of Nirvana was so infatuated with her. Senior sister Jun Huan was really too beautiful. Junior apprentice brother, don't blame us for only appearing now. Just now, we just wanted to see just how far you could endure in such a situation by yourself. But senior apprentice brother Puzhen was anxious, worried that you wouldn't be able to endure the devastation, so he came to help you earlier. Jun Huan ignored the other emperors and only blinked her beautiful phoenix eyes at Lin Sun and transmitted her voice to him with a smile. Lin Sun was speechless for a while. It turned out that she just wanted to test his ability and hide to watch the show? Senior sister Jun Huan was too naughty. But the next moment Jun Huan transmitted her voice to him. In this game, the real troublesome old guy hasn't appeared yet. If the situation is not good, let Ji Xian take you away from here. Of course, this is just a precaution. No one knows what the result will be until the game is over. Lin Sun was shocked. If senior brother and senior sister had full confidence, why would they make such an arrangement? Based on this deduction, how terrifying were those troublesome old guys hiding in the dark? Jun Huan came and killed Emperor Ancestor Qihong with one sword, becoming the second successor of Fangtsuan Mountain to appear in the field, which attracted the attention of everyone. It also caused the situation of this chess match to become turbulent. Invisible murderous aura filled the world, oppressing those emperors and making them look solemn. The Tao of a moment is the most romantic sword Tao. Sword Emperor Jun Huan of Fangtsuan Mountain really lives up to his reputation. Emperor Ancestor Fengting of Panwu Taoist Court sighed softly. This is the second big fish. Emperor Ancestor Xuan of Su Clan of Far Ancient Emperor Clan suddenly said, "Everyone, Jun Huan has appeared. What are you waiting for?" Chapter 21:13. As soon as Void Script Ancestor's voice died away. Boom! A golden rainbow shot through the sky, and a man with a tall hat and a wide belt appeared on it. He was like an emperor with an imposing manner. He was thin, and his eyes reflected the vision of the great path. Emperor Ancestor Tianlan of the Demon Court. He was the one who argued with the Thunder Emperor of Destruction. "Humph, you loser is finally willing to show up?" The Thunder Emperor of Destruction snorted disdainfully. Even though he was just a spirit, he was still very powerful in front of Emperor Ancestor Tianlan. "Ji Xian, do you really think you can be lawless after joining Mountain Heart?" Emperor Ancestor Tianlan's expression was cold. "Let me tell you, you won't be able to survive today." "Just you?" Jun Huan asked. "Of course I'm not alone. The power of Taoist Jun Huan's swordsmanship is great. If I want to catch a big fish like you, I must take it seriously." Emperor Ancestor Tianlong said calmly. Before his voice died away, the void nearby tumbled, and then figures appeared one after another. There were 7 of them, both men and women. Although they looked different, their momentum was terrifying, like the ancestors of the Great Path. As soon as they appeared, the world wailed, as if it could not bear their power. Some Emperor Realm figures even tensed up, feeling oppressed. It should be known that with their cultivation, they could dominate the world, but in the face of these figures, they could only look up to them. Because these were all Emperor Realm figures who had not appeared in the world for many years. Some came from the 6 Dao courts, some from the 10 war clans, and some from the far ancient imperial clans. However, for Jun Huan, Pu Zhen, Lin Sun, and the other descendants of Mountain Heart, these people all had a common name: enemy. The appearance of the Endless Sky Martial Ancestor and the other 7 martial emperors caused the situation to change once more. This kind of power could sweep the world. Lin Sun's pupils narrowed slightly. He was able to defeat this premeditated game, which was extraordinary, but he did not expect it to be so terrifying. As far as the eye could see, ordinary emperors were inferior, and those who had the qualifications to speak were all old antiques who could make the starry sky tremble with a stomp of their feet. Such a scene could probably only be compared to the 10-direction Dao battles of the primeval times and the Dao battles of the emperors of the primeval times. However, Jun Huan didn't panic at all. He continued, "Senior brother Pu Zhen, there are 8 old geezers who want to deal with us. I'll take care of 3, and you take care of the other 5. What do you think?" Pu Zhen was startled and hesitantly said, "Why can't we split it equally?" Jun Huan said confidently, "Well, you're the senior brother. Of course, you have to bear more responsibility." Under Jun Huan's stare, Pu Zhen could only smile bitterly and say in a muffled voice, It does make sense. The 2 of us can help as well." Xia Xinglia said. Beside him, Lightning Emperor of Nirvana nodded. Jun Huan immediately refused and casually said, "You guys should stay here and look after my little junior brother who can't take any more damage." Xia Xinglia and Lightning Emperor of Nirvana looked at each other in dismay. Both of them were powerful figures on the ancient path of the starry sky, but now they were looked down upon. Lin Sun was stunned. What did he mean by "can't take any more damage"? He thought to himself, "Senior sister Jun Huan is more than naughty. Her words are too hurtful. I really don't know why Senior Ji Xian is so infatuated with her." Not only Lin Sun, but also Emperor Ancestor of Tianlong and others were stunned after hearing Jun Huan's arrangement. When had they ever been looked down upon like this? No wonder Mind Mountain was destroyed. It seems that he was too arrogant. A young, aloof Emperor Ancestor sneered. Jun Huan pointed at him and said, "Senior brother Pu Zhen, leave this old guy to me. I'll make him kneel down and repeat the same sentence to me later." "Okay." Pu Zhen readily agreed. "Humph. Reckless." The young Emperor Ancestor's face darkened. What answered him was Jun Huan's unceremonious sword strike. The sword chi was extremely dazzling and magnificent. There was a soul-stirring beauty to it. It was also this sword that opened the curtain of the battle. "Let's go." Almost at the same time, Emperor Ancestor of Tianlong and others attacked together. Emperor Ancestor, the realm of returning to ancestral realm. This realm was too lofty. Even Juyin Martial Emperor could only look up to it, not to mention Lin Sun, a Ju Fu quasi-emperor. When the battle broke out, their figures moved to the depths of the sky in an instant. Only under the sky could they release their power to the extreme. If they were on the ground, they would not only be a hindrance, but also cause great destruction and disaster. Not everyone could bear it. Senior brother Pu Zhen also rushed out, holding the hoe on his shoulder in his hand. The hoe was 12 feet long, black, and quite rough in outline. It seemed to be mottled with rust, but it gave people a dignified feeling of returning to nature. When it was held in Pu Zhen's large hand that was like a cattail leaf fan, it caused his imposing aura to change. His bronze skin that seemed like it was cast from iron was suffused with a strand of thick energy of divinity, and coupled with his robust figure that was like an iron tower, he seemed to possess an imposing aura that could swallow the world. When he said that, Pu Zhen did not hesitate at all. He stepped on the void and smashed the hoe fiercely towards an emperor ancestor. Boom! The sky and earth changed color. It was just a hoe, but it seemed to regard the world as a field, while Pu Zhen seemed to be hoeing the ground, crushing the void into powder. The scene was terrifying. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" The emperor ancestor looked gloomy. Since Pu Zhen and Jun Huan appeared, they had been ignoring their existence in a high and mighty manner. Now they even attacked without saying a word, which had completely infuriated him. As he spoke, his figure leaped forward, and the red divine chains wrapped around his body danced wildly. They suddenly turned into a red axe and collided head-on with Pu Zhen. Bang! A wave of rumbling resounded through the heavens and the earth, while the energy of divinity swept out like a gale. It faintly caused the phenomena of fiend gods wailing, the blood of gods raining, the grand Tao wailing, and so on and so forth, and it threw the workings of the heavens into disorder. That emperor ancestor staggered back by a few tens of steps, and his countenance was a mix of livid and pale. "I'm a boorish fellow that only knows how to farm, and I only believe in the hoe in my hand. In my eyes, all of you are like weeds in the field that must be eliminated. You alone aren't enough, so all of you should attack me together." After he succeeded in this attack, Pu Zhen spoke in a muffled voice. His bronze skin surged with divine energy, and he swung the hoe once more in an extremely simple and violent manner. "Kill!" The other emperor ancestors had been accumulating strength since a long time ago. When they saw this, two of them immediately didn't hesitate to join forces against Pu Zhen. On the other hand, the remaining 5 charged at Jun Huan with extreme tacit understanding. "Junior sister Jun Huan said that I should kill 5 of you. Why didn't all of you listen to me?" Pu Zhen suddenly swung the hoe, and then his figure flashed. In an instant, he smashed it over 10,000 times, and he actually forcefully blasted the joint forces of 3 emperor ancestors away. At the same time, he waved his hand to obstruct the other 2 emperor ancestors that were charging at Jun Huan. In other words, in an instant, Pu Zhen had started a battle against 5 emperor ancestors by himself. His imposing aura of fighting all by himself, his bearing of looking down upon all the emperor realm cultivators in the world, and his aura of supremacy in the world caused others to tremble. "You're courting death! You damnable bastard! You're simply courting death!" Pu Zhen's extremely arrogant attitude had completely infuriated those emperor ancestors, and all of them fought him head-on. They attacked without holding back at all, and all of them utilized their trump cards. For a time, the entire heavens and the earth were filled with numerous figures that seemed like gods. They moved freely through the depths of the sky and fought intensely in the 9 heavens, and they fought to the point the heavens and the earth dimmed down. This was a battle between emperor ancestors. Every single ability they utilized could be considered to be supreme secret techniques of the Emperor Tao, so it was obvious how heaven-defying this battle was. At this moment, the entire continent that Cloud Mountain resided in was affected by it. The heavens and the earth dimmed, space split apart, the ground collapsed, and the sun fell and the moon descended. Thunder rumbled and lightning rumbled everywhere while the energy of divinity flowed, and it threw the heavens and the earth into disorder. The prehistoric world was vast like a large world, and the myriad of living beings that resided there, regardless of their cultivations, were terrified to the point their bodies went weak and were out of their wits at this moment. They even thought that the end of the world was descending upon them. Some cowardly existences were even terrified to the point of wetting themselves and fainting on the spot. The entire world was filled with chaotic scenes of disaster. All of this had been caused by the battle of the imperial ancestors. Senior brother Pu Zhen really deserves to be from a farming background. Such methods are truly crude. June Huan sighed with emotion, and then her beautiful slanted eyes narrowed. If I don't exert some strength, then it'll probably be troublesome. Looks like I can only be crude for once. Near her, the three monarch ancestors had already made their moves and were attacking her from all sides. As she spoke, June Huan flicked her sleeve. An invisible sword that was coiled with divine radiance appeared out of thin air. In an instant, the heavens and the earth dimmed down while boundless and vast divine energy swarmed into the invisible sword. Numerous characters of the sword actually appeared within this indistinct space. There were golden characters that twisted like earthworms, ancient and strange inscriptions, obscure and mysterious characters of fiend gods, and mysterious characters of chaos that carried boundless meaning. All of these ancient and different characters transformed into a strand of sword chi that was branded with the energy of history and contained the might of time. As soon as they appeared, they coiled around the invisible sword. In merely an instant, the invisible sword actually seemed as if it had obtained intelligence, and it erupted with boundless divine energy as it charged into the 9 heavens and shook the myriad of stars in the starry sky. Such impetus could be said to be unprecedentedly rare. It was even to the extent that all the living beings in the entire continent acutely noticed that a strand of the vast and supreme energy of the sword was suffusing the boundlessly high sky. On the other hand, June Huan raised her slender and fair hand to grab the invisible sword, and then she swept it horizontally. Swoosh! In an instant, the heavens collapsed, the earth split apart, and all things collapsed. The expressions of the 3 emperor ancestors changed, and they collided head-on with it with all their might. Bang! A wave of violent rumbling resounded. The depths of the sky were filled with terrifying divine radiance and the glow of the Tao, and it was boundlessly vast. It could be seen that the 3 emperor ancestors who were like gods had actually been suppressed by June Huan's energy of the sword Tao since the beginning. June Huan is still the same as before. Once she attacks, she's even more ferocious and domineering than a man. Ji Xian revealed an infatuated expression when he witnessed this scene, and his heart shook. "Thank you, Jier, for the reward." The goldfish said that it would erupt in the 9th month, and it would erupt slightly before the middle of the month before the end of the month. Chapter 21:14. True Emperor fought 5 by himself, and he possessed peerless divine might. Every swing of his hoe caused the heavens and the earth to tremble while divine radiance rumbled, and he was extremely formidable. On the other hand, Sword Emperor June Huan demonstrated the most splendid sword Tao. It was so magnificent that no words could describe it. The 3 great emperors were so suppressed that they couldn't even lift their heads. The supreme means they displayed also made the other emperors tremble and change their expressions. They were too strong. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have been able to imagine how powerful the descendants of Mount Fangsuan were. It should be known that the monarch ancestor was a supreme being who had stepped into the 9th level of the emperor realm. Even in the 6 major Tao courts, he was an existence that could stabilize the situation. But now, the 8 emperor ancestors attacked together, but it was obvious that they were not strong enough. If I set foot in this realm, I can go anywhere in this starry sky. Xia Xinglia's eyes were burning with passion. He was only 1 step away from the ancestral reversion realm. Lin Sun's eyes widened. However, the battle between the emperor ancestors in the depths of the sky was too vast and terrible for him to see. He could only see that even though they were besieged, Pu Zhen and June Huan were able to cope with it easily and even had the upper hand. This made his heart tremble. He couldn't imagine it. It was said that Lin Sun was invincible in the Saint Realm, but compared with Pu Zhen and June Huan, he was nothing. Suddenly, an indifferent voice resounded between heaven and earth. "Fellow Taoists, please go and lend a hand to Tianlan and the others." Before he could finish his words, several figures dashed out. Each of them was like a supreme ruler, and their power was so great that the void wailed. It was another group of emperor ancestors. As soon as they appeared, they rushed into the depths of the sky and joined the battle. Together with Tianlan and the others, they besieged Pu Zhen and Jun Huan. Good! In this way we can easily kill the 2 remnants of Mount Fangtsuan. The surroundings were stirred while the spirits of the Zhu Yin martial emperor and the other imperial emperors were refreshed. Even though they weren't able to interfere in this battle between imperial ancestors, they were clearly aware that no matter how strong Jun Huan and Pu Zhen were, it would be impossible for them to kill their way out of this encirclement. Lin Sun's heart sank and he clenched his hands quietly. He couldn't help but wonder how many Emperor Ancestor Realm experts were hiding in the vicinity of Cloud Mountain. I'm going to help Jun Huan. The Thunder Emperor of Annihilation, Ji Xian, could no longer sit still. Thunder rumbled around his body and his aura was astonishing. You only have the power of a primordial spirit left, yet you still want to risk your life? Xia Henglai frowned. If Jun Huan is in trouble, my life will be meaningless. Ji Xian took a deep breath and soared into the sky. You overestimate yourself. A sneer was heard. The Burning Sky Demon Emperor and the Juyin Martial Emperor made a move together, stopping Ji Xian in midair. Boom! The Burning Sky Devil Emperor raised his hand as a dazzling golden halberd smashed out, and it swept up layers of Emperor Dao laws that surged and terrified everyone. The Absolute Seal Martial Emperor swung his fist. The fist seal was like a mountain as it pressed down from the side. In an instant, Ji Xian was obstructed. If he was at his peak, he would be able to annihilate these 2 opponents with a wave of his hand. Unfortunately, he was only a strand of his soul now. Even if he attacked with all his might, he wouldn't be able to break through the encirclement. Naturally, he wouldn't be able to help Jun Huan. Do you really think you can stop me like this? Ji Xian was furious. Don't risk your life. Xia Honglia's pupils shrank as if he had guessed Ji Xian's thoughts. Senior, please help Senior Ji Xian. Lin Sun said quickly. What about you? Xia Henglai frowned. I have my own means to deal with it. Lin Sun looked calm. Good. Xia Henglai made a prompt decision. With a clang, the sound of a sword shocked the world. His figure swept through the air, emitting a terrifying and boundless power. For the Extreme Demon Sword Emperor, except for the Emperor Ancestor, he didn't care about the other Emperor Realm figures present. He didn't take action before just because he wanted to protect Lin Sun. However, as soon as Xia Henglai moved, he was stared at by a terrifying sword intent, which made him suddenly stop, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Xia Henglai, your opponent is me. With a low and hoarse voice, a purple-haired man appeared out of thin air. He looked cold and handsome, wearing a scarlet crane cloak. In his hand, he was holding a dark green iron spear, the tip of which was dazzling. Naylan Chi, do you also want to fight against me? Xia Honglia's eyes were sharp, and his sword intent was amazing. Naylan Chi, the antique of the Naylan family of the far ancient Emperor clan, an Emperor Realm figure who had reached the pinnacle of Spear Tao, was known as Great Emperor Fengwu. Why not? Naylan Chi's face was cold. He swept the iron spear in his hand and moved to kill. Since that's the case, I'll cut off your head today. Xia Henglai sneered and waved his sword to kill. In a flash, the battle began. One was the Extreme Demon Sword Emperor, and the other was Great Emperor Fengwu. One sword and one spear, they opened up a field in the void and began to kill. Boom! Terrifying Emperor Dao Divine might drown the area where the 2 of them fought. Sword chi shot out horizontally and vertically while spear images flickered, and they revealed numerous scenes that shook the heavens and the earth. Lin Sun was nervous. Ji Xian was restrained, so was Xia Henglai. In the deeper part of the sky, Jun Huan and Pu Zhen were besieged by a group of Emperor ancestors. At this point, the situation changed again. Even those Emperor Realm figures present were dazzled and showed a look of disbelief. In other words, even they did not expect that there would be so many legendary and terrifying figures appearing one after another. Is the Tao Battle of Emperors going to take place again after nearly 100,000 years? Someone whispered. Whoosh. Silently, a golden lotus appeared in the void under Lin Sun's feet. The petals were in full bloom, flowing with mysterious emperor luster, and it was about to swallow Lin Sun whole into the stamen. But Lin Sun didn't notice it at all. This was the attack of a real emperor realm figure, and the power was mysterious, far beyond his imagination. In the dark, a gray-robed old woman showed a smile. But in just a moment, her smile froze. The dazzling golden lotus flower that she had released was suddenly struck by a jade ruler. Crack! The golden lotus trembled, and the blooming petals withered and turned into ashes. Then, the jade ruler swept around Lin Sun. In an instant, an alms bowl was smashed and flew backward, a red jade belt was smashed, and an emerald-like gourd was smashed into the void. That was to say, when the jade ruler swept across, the three treasures that were originally hidden in the void and quietly attacking Lin Sun were smashed one by one. Obviously, it was not only the gray-robed old woman who attacked before. At the same time, there were three other terrible figures. Their purpose was to capture Lin Sun and take away his chaos treasures and good fortune. If it weren't for the jade ruler, they would have succeeded. Witnessing this scene, Lin Sun was shocked. His scalp was numb, and his clothes were soaked in cold sweat. Who? Damn it! It's all in vain, an angry voice sounded, which also attracted the attention of some other big shots present. All eyes looked over and saw a figure appeared beside Lin Sun. He wore a scholar's robe with wide sleeves and a scroll in his hand. His eyes were clear, and his back was straight, with a kind of gentle temperament like jade. He was like a refined and modest gentleman who was well versed in poetry and literature. But it was such an elegant man, in the eyes of other emperors present, that made them palpitate physically and mentally. Junior brother, my Taoist name is Xueya, and I rank 19th in the sect. The man in a scholar's robe said with clear and gentle eyes. His voice infiltrated Lin Sun's heart like a stream, sweeping away the anxiety and tension in his mind, making him quiet and peaceful. The 19th senior brother, Xueya. Lin Sun thought of Qianyu's sword flower and remembered that she had told him to bring a bamboo sword of Tingxue to Xue. But he didn't expect that the first time he met Xueya would be in such a situation. Nice to meet you, senior brother, Lin Sun said with gratitude in his heart. He knew that if Xueya didn't help him, he would have met with an accident just now. When we solve the problem at hand, we will talk about the old days. Xueya smiled and patted Lin Sun on the shoulder. Then he looked at the field with a touch of indifference in his gentle and clear eyes. At this time, all the emperors in the field showed a look of surprise. The name Xueya was strange to them, but who didn't know the name of the 19th descendant of Mountain of Mind and Heart, Zhuangyuan? The Zhuangyuan of Emperor's Way was famous everywhere. Xueya had been regarded as the leader of the emperors a long time ago. He was a legendary figure who could win the title of Zhuangyuan in the attainment of Emperor's Way. Zhuangyuan, I didn't expect that you are still alive. Didn't they say that you have met with misfortune on the way to the other side of the starry sky? A deep voice rang out. Rumors can't be taken seriously. Xueya's eyes were full of sadness. What I regret most now is that I went to the other side of the starry sky. Otherwise, I wouldn't have missed the Tao Battle of Emperors in ancient times. Humph! Even if you participated in that battle, I'm afraid you would have died. A cold snort sounded. Really? The sadness in Xueya's eyes disappeared and was replaced by a touch of indifference. He raised his hand and pointed at the void. Whoosh! A dazzling green jade ruler swept out and tore through the void. The void in the distance was smashed by the jade ruler, and suddenly there was a deafening roar. At the same time, a figure let out a muffled groan and staggered out. It was the gray-robed old woman who had sneak-attacked Lin Sun before. Her reaction was extremely swift. She crisscrossed her hands and condensed numerous golden Tao lotuses to collide head-on with the jade ruler that slashed down towards her. Boom! An earth-shattering collision sounded, and the sky and earth darkened. The green jade ruler smashed the gray-robed old woman's head with irresistible force. No matter how she resisted, it was useless. In the end, accompanied by a muffled sound, the gray-robed old woman's body and primordial spirit were smashed into pieces. It was only a moment before the gray-robed old woman, who had an extremely high attainment in the Tao of Emperor Realm, died. It's you who will die. Chapter 21:15. One strike from the Jade Ruler killed an emperor. The terrifying power that Shuya displayed caused everyone's expression to change. Emperor Zhen and Sword Emperor Jun Huan were already unimaginably powerful. Now there was another one who was not inferior to them. This was totally beyond everyone's expectation. Only some old people who had participated in the Battle of Emperors in the ancient times knew that although there were only a few descendants of Fangtsuan Mountain, each of them had unimaginably terrifying combat power. Otherwise, there would not have been such tragic casualties in the Battle of Emperors. Junior brother, it is not easy to reach the Emperor Realm, but there are different levels. The so-called 9 levels of Emperor Realm, each level is different. Different realms control different powers. Shuya said gently, Senior brother Pu Zhen and junior sister Juanhuan have already stepped into the 9th stage of the Emperor Realm. They have achieved ancestral awakening in the Emperor Realm and can be called Emperor Ancestors. But in the past, they had to suppress their realms in order to avoid being captured by the forbidden power, so that people would think that they were just ordinary Emperor Realm cultivators. But now it's different. The word, not the same, was said with deep meaning. This was an intense chess match, but Shuya acted as if he didn't see anything and explained the secrets of the Emperor Realm to Lin Sun. Lin Sun was stunned. In the depths of the sky, Jun Huan's impatient voice sounded, 19th senior brother, don't talk so much nonsense. Help me and senior brother Pu Zhen. Nerd. Pu Zhen's dull voice rang out. Clearly, this was his evaluation of Shuya. Lin Sun's lips twitched. Perhaps only senior sister Jun Huan and senior brother Pu Zhen dared to talk to Shuya like this, but Shuya laughed and shook his head. He sat in the void and opened the scroll in his hand. His expression was calm, his eyes clear, and his whole body emitted a noble spirit, sweeping in all directions. Zibuyu, strange power, chaotic spirit. A sound of Tao came from Shuya's lips. Every word seemed to be imprinted with the mystery of the Great Way, resounding between heaven and earth like a great bell, surging like thunder, shocking people. As these words rang out, a blazing righteous chi soared into the sky, bathing Pu Zhen and Jun Huan's figures within it. In an instant, their momentum suddenly rose, as if they were helped by God. The true decree of the Confucian Tao. It's rumored to be a supreme secret technique that can raise a cultivator's battle prowess. It's listed as one of the 9 great sect-guarding legacies of Mount Heart and Soul. Is there really such a mystical scripture? A wave of shocked voices resounded in the surroundings. In the depths of the sky, Jun Huan and Pu Zhen's battle prowess had clearly increased, and there were faint signs of them turning the situation around. In fact, Ji Xian, who was fighting against Battle Emperor Juyin and Demon Emperor Raging Sky, and Xia Xinglie, who was fighting against Great Emperor Fengwu, had also increased their battle strength significantly. And this was all because of Shuya's Tao rune. Such an incredible scene amazed Lin Sun again and again. The wise have no doubts, the benevolent have no worries, and the brave have no fear. Those with lofty ideals and benevolence do not seek to harm others, but to kill others to achieve righteousness. The commander of the 3 armies can be seized, but the will of an ordinary man cannot be seized. A gentleman does not seek satiety when he eats, nor does he seek peace when he lives. If he is quick-witted and careful with his words, he will have the right way. In the following time, Shuya sat cross-legged in the void, reciting incantations and chanting scriptures. The Great Spirit between heaven and earth was like the Yangtze River, presenting a grand and magnificent atmosphere. Some Tao runes were like beautiful pearls, shining brightly and flying all over the sky. In Lin Sun's ears, it was like listening to the Great Way, intoxicated. In the ears of Jun Huan, Pu Zhen, Xia Xinglie, and Ji Xian, their battle strength rose, and they became braver and stronger as they fought. In the ears of the other emperors present, it was like an invisible sword, fiercely chopping at their Taoist heart and will, making their qi and blood tumble, their state of mind turbulent, and their faces all changed. Such a scene could simply be said to shock the heavens and the earth and make gods weep. "Stop him!" A roar sounded. Several emperors rushed out, took out their emperor treasures, performed the emperor's scripture, and attacked Shuya. Boom! The glow of treasures and the glow of the Tao covered the heavens and the earth as they surged over, and they crushed space with a shocking impetus. Shuya sat cross-legged in the void, not hearing, not asking, not happy, not sad. His figure was bathed in the Great Spirit, chanting scriptures of the Great Way, like an inviolable god. Lines of brilliant and blazing Tao runes glowed and rushed out of his body, blocking and dissolving the murderous power one by one. The emperors who rushed over, on the other hand, were suppressed and soon coughed up blood, their faces all changing in horror. This was too terrifying. A person sitting alone in the world, reciting scriptures, could produce such incredible power. This was simply incredible. The Emperor's Ways champion, the Great Ways scholar. At this moment, people deeply understood the true meaning of this praise. The Great Ways scholar was like the heavenly constitution. Boom! In the depths of the sky, Pu Zhen waved his fist and killed an emperor ancestor, his blood dyeing the sky scarlet. How exciting! A hint of delight appeared on Pu Zhen's stiff face. Another emperor ancestor died. This scene shocked everyone. No one dared to believe it, their limbs turning cold. How many years had it been since such a bloody and chaotic event had happened in this world? The death of an emperor ancestor was so serious that it could cause the heavens to tremble. However, as Jun Huan, Pu Zhen, and Shuya, the three successors of Fangtsuan Mountain, appeared in front of Cloud Mountain, two emperors had already died. Poof! The Juyin martial emperor, who was fighting with the lightning emperor of destruction, was hit by a blinding lightning seal and his body instantly split apart. His Yuan Shun flew out and was about to escape when it was drowned by the Great Spirit that shot into the sky. "No, save me, save me!" The Juyin martial emperor's Yuan Shun screamed. So what if he was an emperor? In the face of death, it could not reduce the fear and unwillingness in his heart. In the blink of an eye, the Juyin martial emperor's Yuan Shin was burned to ashes. This scene of death caused another wave of shock to sweep through the surroundings. It was not an exaggeration to say that after Shuya appeared, the situation of this chess match had been turned around by him alone. It was because of him that Jun Huan and Pu Zhen's combat strength had increased. It was also because of him that the other emperors suffered from the impact of his Tao voice of warped silk. Enough! A cold voice suddenly rang out. Then, a figure that was as imposing as a god appeared out of thin air and waved his hand to slap. A palm formed. His 5 fingers were like a mountain and his palm was like a world. It contained the images of the stars and reflected the mysteries of the laws of the Tao. It was just a palm, but it seemed like a world was slashing towards him. Boom! More than half of the Great Spirit Qi that filled the area was destroyed by this palm. Moreover, the palm didn't slow down and continued to cover Shuya. Confucius said that rotten wood cannot be carved, and a wall of **T cannot be built. Shuya's words were like thunder. Immediately, the immeasurably powerful palm print crumbled inch by inch in front of him. Looking at the battlefield, the majestic figure was a strange-looking man. His eyes were as deep as purgatory, and he carried an ancient sword on his back. Panwu Daoist Court's Cloud Light Sword Ancestor. The crowd instantly boiled over as they recognized the person who had attacked. It was one of the 5 ancestors of the Panwu Daoist Court. He had been famous since the primordial age. The enemies that had died at his hands were uncountable. At this moment, Shui Ya's expression turned serious. It was obvious that he knew how powerful this Cloud Light Sword ancestor was. Scholar, you dare to call me a rotten wood and a wall of sh*t? How dare you? The man snickered and pointed. With a clang, the ancient sword on his back soared into the air and slashed towards Shuya. This ancient sword was less than 2 feet long and was as white as snow. The blade was not sharp, but it reflected complex and cryptic Tao patterns. With this slash, heaven and earth were split into 2 like a canvas. The terrifying sword intent made the emperors feel as if their souls were being torn apart and their eyes stung. This slash was too powerful. A green jade ruler appeared in front of Shuya and clashed with the sword chi. Boom! The world shook and the sun and moon dimmed. Shuya's body swayed, but he maintained his sitting posture. However, his expression became more and more serious. If you focus on fighting me, you might be able to hold on for a while. Unfortunately, you still have to help true martial emperor and sword emperor Juanhuan. If you're distracted, you'll definitely lose. As the Cloud Light Sword ancestor spoke, the ancient sword glowed and slashed down again. Swish! The sword intent was boiling and traversed the void. The state where the Cloud Light Mountain was located was vast and boundless. However, when the sword slashed out, the entire state shook and countless mountains suddenly collapsed. Countless houses collapsed with a loud rumble, and countless exclamations and cries of alarm rang out. The power of one slash shook the entire state. Shuya took a deep breath and was about to get up to fight when he heard a gentle voice. "Junior brother, just focus on chanting." When the voice was heard, a ray of light shot out and entangled in the void. The Cloud Light Sword ancestor's shocking slash was entangled by the thread. Before it could break free, it was cut by the thread and split in midair. How could it be blocked? There was a stir in the field, and the emperors were all shocked. That unparalleled and majestic slash was resolved just like that? A knowing smile appeared on Shuya's lip. He discarded all distracting thoughts and did not think about anything else. His body and mind were empty as he recited the classic. In the distance, the pupils of the Cloud Light Sword ancestor shrank. The ancient sword was steaming, but he didn't attack anymore. A graceful and beautiful figure quietly appeared in front of Shuya and Lin Sun. Her long black hair was coiled into a bun, revealing a plain and tranquil face. From the beginning to the end, she gave people the feeling that she was as soft and clean as water, and her temperament was so gentle. But when she appeared, there was a burst of exclamation. "It's her!" Emperor Cloudy Rock and the others all recognized that before the start of the ancient immortal forbidden area, this woman had appeared as a disciple of the Guiyuan Taoism court and slapped the fire spirit empress. Why is she here? It's impossible. There was a burst of disbelief in the dark, as if they didn't expect that the person who shouldn't be here would appear. Emperor Cloudy Light Sword ancestor was surprised, and his eyes flickered. This plain and gentle woman was Ruosu, the 3rd successor of Mount Heart and Mind. When he saw Ruosu, Lin Sun also felt at ease and even looked forward to the real fight. What would 3rd senior sister look like? There are many voices urging me to update in the book review section and the group of readers. There are also complaints about Goldfish's slow updating. Well, it's not that Goldfish is not good enough, but that Goldfish is trying hard to write a more exciting battle.